Hi, Snappy. Well, we're both in the screen right now, so I should say hi to you first. How are you, man? All
Great to
good?
see you, Bruno. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me on. It's really exciting.
Oh,
And
it's
I'm
an honor
happy to
for us.
be, your first live stream guest, which is wild.
Yeah,
So
it is. It is. So if you don't mind, I will just do a small intro in Spanish.
please.
Um, Thank you. Buenas noches. Esta es, bueno, es nuestro primer live stream. Vengo como emisario del equipo Stones and Serpents. Hemos decidido experimentar a través de este formato, también motivados un poco por nuestro amigo que está aquí en la pantalla, Snappy, de Drawing Down the Dragon. Ese es su canal de YouTube. Y bueno, estamos generando esta pequeña comunidad para poder introducir un poco también al español todo el trabajo que hemos estado haciendo alrededor de nuestro documental Stones and Serpents. Y en este camino hemos podido conocer gente, hemos podido recibir información de gente que ha trabajado con nosotros. Estamos trabajando hace un poco menos de un año en esta filmación y estaremos trabajando durante todo el año, y durante todo este camino hemos conocido a gente increíble como Snappy acá, que obviamente para hacer un documental es necesario rodearse de gente que esté preparada, con la que uno pueda conversar, hacer preguntas, etcétera. Y Snappy un poco nos ha introducido en este mundo del live stream. Yo ya pude hacer uno en su canal, y él también me ha motivado como para ahora nosotros probar la misma idea. Así que sin decir más, les voy a presentar a Snappy. Él se va a presentar a sí mismo, a ustedes. Y bueno, muchas gracias para quienes estén conectados, y gracias en el futuro para quienes se vayan a conectar después. So Snappy, that was my Spanish improvisation.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm sure your fans appreciate
Yeah.
it. It's beautiful that you got, that you can do that in multiple languages. I love it.
Yeah, well, we're trying to bring a bit of the whole investigation we're doing around the documentary, and I guess this is a very good idea. Actually, we were inspired by what you are doing with your channel, what Amon is doing, Magdalena. Also, I can see her more like in this online idea of sharing and community sharing. So this is quite new for me as a producer, but I'm loving it and I'm getting a lot of good information. So I would love for you to just talk to a small but giant audience at the same time
Right. I'm
about
happy to be
yourself.
here with
Just
you. Yeah,
just
yeah.
a little bit about yourself, man.
Yeah, so my name is Snappy, and my whole thing is I'm a I would describe myself as a witch, someone who practices within the magical tradition. I'm a professional tarot reader. I operate the channel Drawing Down the Dragon. And I kind of, we met and became acquainted through Lady Babylon and Amon Hillman and his particular work. And I came into Amon's work in sort of an interesting way. I have I had at the time really been pursuing exploring this Saturnian cult magic, and was really, really, really interested in this stuff, and was really interested in the great mother cults. And Ammon shows up on my stream one day, and he's the first person I really saw using the language and talking as someone who was actually doing it. The first interview I saw was with this incredible podcast. I'm trying to remember now. Um, but it was with this doctor of psychology. Someone could probably remind me in the chat, but it's one of the earliest interviews that Ammon did. And he talks about how he has a cheat, how he's conversing with the muse. And
Mm.
I saw him, he
I
had the
remember that.
tattoo. Yeah, he has got the tattoo of Medea and everything. And I was just like, man, this is blowing my mind. So I had to reach out to Ammon and get in touch with him. And yeah, it took me, he wound up giving me the keys to discovering my own muse and giving me the keys to exploring this whole magical world in a whole new perspective. And it just inflamed me in inspiration and passion. And so I started my channel, and it's completely transformed my entire life, you know, in a truly magical way. I met my wife through this work. I met many of my best friends through this work. Yeah, it's been such a wild, incredible experience, you know.
And so at some point, I guess, also as inspired you in what I'm getting is like from practical kind of idea of everything, because you can take all of that also like as, I don't know, you can go with the approach of, I want to know this real history, or I want to know more about like what is all this translation that he's doing, what is philology, which got me at the first, you know. But you went like for a practical kind of stuff, which
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
pretty much what I'm getting.
yeah, well, it's because, like, okay, I mean, Amon's stuff is radical in a couple ways, right?
Mhm.
His real contribution is this idea of Medea as the soteria, and the communion as being from her kolpos, right? It's being a product of the priestess, where she is the, for lack of a better term, the factory. But a lot of the
Mhm.
other stuff that Ammon is talking about, I had some inkling of, you know. So we're going to get into a bunch of this stuff today, but like my background is in religion studies, and so
Okay.
I was already aware of the controversy with the boy in Mark because of the secret gospel of Mark and the work of Morton Smith. If you're in religion studies, this particular work was such a massive controversy. It, you know, Morton Smith claims that in 1958, while he was at this Orthodox Greek monastery called Marba, I believe,
Mhm.
he claimed to have discovered a letter written inside of another tome. And this letter was by Clement of Alexandria, talking about the secret true doctrine of Mark. And he's railing against these people called the Carpocratians. And so Morton Smith translates this text, right?
Mhm.
And he brings a lot of this into sort of the mainstream. But within academia, he gets completely trashed for a couple reasons. Um, One, he's not able to reproduce the original manuscript. He's only able to reproduce photographs for whatever reason. I'm not too sure. The other thing is that Morton Smith was seen as a radical. He was someone who broke away with the church and became a huge activist in the queer community. So many
Mhm.
people saw him as having a vendetta,
Okay.
So I was aware a lot of that stuff, you know, and Ammon I see is building off of like a lot of these more radical characters like Morton Smith. He certainly goes farther and is more theatrical and fun with it. Like the big thing that Ammon did for me is that I had that lens on of academia, and I had that snobbery of academia. So when I first confronted Morton Smith, I was like, well, you don't have the manuscript, I'm not buying it, you know. I
Okay.
read it in passing, and all my professors dismissed it, and I moved on. But since now coming into the Ammon work and studying this stuff for myself and going through these texts, learning a little bit of Greek and listening to him, it's like I've completely changed my entire mind. Like he completely changed my entire mind on so much having to do with with academia, to be honest, you know.
Yeah. And just to like to understand it a bit more, when you talk about this background in religion studies,
Mhm.
can you like tell us just a bit like how will that be? Because I cannot, I don't get a like a word in Spanish to be able to actually explain it in subtitles or whatever, that I would love for you to
Yeah.
for the
So
audience in Spanish will understand
yeah,
what will be like your background in religion.
so religion
What do you mean?
studies is, or religious studies is an academic form of studying religion that kind of comes out of the Germanic school.
Okay.
And I studied at Carleton University in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. I got my bachelor's degree. And then I also did a partial master's degree in philosophy at the University of Pune. in Maharashtra, India. So that's my academic background. So I didn't go too far in academia, but I had this knowledge, and I've always been a voracious reader and just really nerdy about this stuff. Religion studies is really sort of like, um, how do I describe it? It's a form of the humanities. It comes out of like the sociological tradition, and it's attempting to analyze religion through textual analysis, and this and compare it in comparative religion studies.
Okay, amazing. So it's a broad.
Very,
You
very, very,
see
very broad.
religion as a phenomenon at the same time as a sociological and phenomenon also, I guess, and going into like very broad spectrum of what religion actually is and has
And a lot of it is
how
trying to, like, I mean, it really depends on the perspective you take. There are multiple perspectives you can take in academia, right? And all these perspectives are competing with each other, but like what you see a lot in religion studies is an attempt to try and understand a tradition through its own lens, to analyze its text and its history, and to make sense of it through the lens in which it gives you,
okay.
So they kind of have different, that in the past you do get some of these scholars now, but not as many. There's been a kind of a rehabilitation of this, but classically, you would get scholars like Mircea Eliade, or like Robert Graves, or like James Fraser, who are doing these mass mythopoetic comparisons, and there's also a lot of like, we have to be honest, a lot of this comes out of the historical colonial projects of Germany and England. And so there's been a lot of like reevaluation of religious studies, as with sociology and anthropology, because so much of the early history of this was invested in creating a white history and, rewriting history for the purposes of empire. And you get a lot of racism and a lot of ridiculousness, but it's
and maybe that's
academia is
why
complicated.
but if you don't mind, maybe that has something what you were just saying, maybe that has is related why you wanted to keep going researching that avenue in India, or
So
if you
I
don't
got
mind.
yeah. So my personal thing is like is a little bit of needs a little bit unpacking here. So I grew up in an atheist family, but like with Catholic kind of trappings, and in a very, very Christian area. And as a young person, I was very confused and was always pursuing the spiritual. And I got kind of roped into a Christian cult, in a sense. I got invited to go to various youth groups, and I got right into a lot of Christian stuff. I didn't wind up getting too deep into any specific church, but I, being the kind of person I am, got really, really, really deep into the philosophy and into reading and into Christianity. And I really damaged myself. I isolated myself. I got obsessed with a lot of, and this is, it's ridiculous to say, but I'm like a 14, 15-year-old person obsessing over Greek schema and chanting the Jesus prayer in my room, trying to be a good person and just beating the crap out of myself. Through a roundabout way, I wound up breaking free of a lot of this, but then I was left really deeply confused. So I didn't want to correspond to the atheism of my parents, and I rejected the Christianity that I had found, and I was left uncertain of what to do. And so religion studies was my youthful attempt to try and find a way to make sense of reality. So I got into religion studies, and quickly it just decimated Christianity for me. So while I had broken free of Christianity for moral reasons, studying it just made it anathema. And then the more I started to study religions, they all started to look like this to me. I was really into this idea of trying to find the right one, so I studied Islam, I studied Hinduism, I studied everything. While I was studying Indian religions, I met really two important professors, Dr. Richard Mann and Dr. Harsh Dehasia. And these two beautiful men completely changed my life. They inspired me in radical philosophy, and I broke free of the trappings of religion and started to get into more spirituality. A real big thing for me was studying aesthetics, Indian aesthetics, and getting into studying Shaivism, or like Kashmiri Shaivism. Uh, and I was just really just amazed by a lot of these philosophies, specifically this character, Abhinavagupta, and
Hmm.
the idea of non-qualified monism or unqualified monism. So the one in the many. It gets really complicated, but for me, as a spiritual seeker and someone into the philosophy, this stuff just like exploded my brain in a way I couldn't comprehend. And I was good at it and I got rewarded for it. And these professors liked me and they encouraged me and they wrote me recommendation letters. And I got to go to everything happened so fast. I got to go to India. It was all because I was just good at it and I loved it. And when I was in India, though, it was another wake up call and another shattering because the experience of the reality of religion in India was a whole other thing. And, I was very young at the time and very naive. And there's still beauty in philosophy, but after my experience in India and going through a lot of that, I wound up just becoming completely disillusioned with academia. So much of academia is, it's a boys' club arguing semantics, and it's a bunch of A+ students screaming at each other, in papers, in journals, and there's no money, and there's no respect, and I was just like, what am I doing? You know?
Hmm. And but but I guess also, have you, before all of this, have you been abroad, like in another continent, or have you traveled before this? Did
No,
happen
I
to you?
had not traveled. I had
Okay,
not
so
traveled at all. So we're
it
talking like
was
this was the
all at the
most
same time.
radical. Oh
Yeah.
man, and it could like it really messed me up, because I was a little bit too young and naive to be doing it. There is
Hmm.
like India is such a don't get me wrong, it's such a beautiful place, but I was made aware of my privilege very, very fast.
Okay.
I come from a very affluent place where you just don't have to worry, or you don't see a lot of things. And then in India, the reality of humanity is laid bare. We'll say that,
Hmm.
you know. Um, but again, I met the most beautiful people imaginable. I don't have criticism of India, you know. India made me more critical of my home, if anything. But yeah.
Okay, beautiful. The just last question about this, because I love all of this. How traveling also is connected with sometimes with like very important moments in a person's life. So at the same time, you're like realizing all of this, you get this opportunity, you get to a place that has another rhythm, another language, another sound, like sounding landscape, whatever, like when you go
Absolutely.
abroad, I mean, for the first time, opens everything. So what will you say about like that chapter of India, besides the whole topic that you were studying, but just like a traveler? What will you, how was that? How was that traveling?
The biggest thing for me is that like every single preconception that I had about India was shattered. And I'm one of these
Oh.
voracious, nerdy readers. So I had done my due diligence and I had thought I knew, and no, I didn't know shit. And that was for a young person. Now I accept that, you go someplace, you just gotta brace for it and listen to the people there. Don't come with preconceived notions. But as a young man, I did not understand this. So I had all these expectations and they were shattered. Like a big thing for me was when you travel around India, it's like it's not one or two languages, it's like 1,000 languages. It's not one or two cultures, it's like 1,000 cultures. You
It's a
travel
huge
an
country.
hour, it's like it's more like Europe. India is like Europe, all
Mhm.
these different places, and all the people were so incredibly beautiful. The big thing too was just like, man, okay, couple really interesting anecdotes. Okay,
Mhm.
in
Love it.
Canada, we really prioritize like doing it yourself. and doing it yourself and being your own person. You don't ask for help and kind of stuff like this. All
Okay.
right. So I have this kind of mentality, so it was really hard for me to adjust to India, where especially as a rich person, you're meant to spend the money. You got to employ people. And just as that, like, I was rich. My dollar went so far, and people are desperate. I had to learn to like it and to welcome in people wanting to help me and wanted to do little things like having extra servers and stuff. Because at first I was so judgmental of this, but it was my own ignorance, not understanding the reality of the situation in India and just being in like silliness. Like, for example, I rented a flat and I was
Mm-hmm.
doing my laundry myself in the flat. No one is doing their laundry. None of the students are doing their laundry except for me, because everyone is going to the lady down the street at the end of our flat
Okay.
and giving her a couple rupees and getting it all done infinitely better than you could ever do on your own. Right? But here I
Yeah,
am
yeah,
using this
I get you.
washing machine, struggling with this. And eventually the washing machine actually broke. Okay. And I still didn't go. I was washing my clothes in my tub. And my friend Sartuk comes in and he looks at me and goes, Snappy, what the heck are you doing? And he had to just put me in my place. It's like, look, you're rich. You were rich here. You got to go give that woman good work. Don't feel guilty about this. Go give her good work and, like, call up the plumber, get them to fix your washing machine. Like, what are you doing? It's
Yeah,
okay. It's okay to get help. And like little things like this, I used to get so upset about the rickshaw wallahs ripping me off for like 5-10 rupees. But it's 5-10 rupees, man. And these people, they need the money. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. So that was such a huge thing, was just getting over a lot of that judgmental, uptightness.
yeah. It's like great story, man, because it's like everything that you were doing at that time also will be connected with this kind of experiences. This is just for me.
Absolutely.
For the first time when I was in Morocco, I was living in Morocco for like 5 months once, like years ago. And the first time I was trying in the morning to buy bread, so the guy didn't have, and I was like, okay, don't worry. But he was like, he didn't let me go. He was like, no, you will come with me. You will come here. I will make some bread for you. And then he didn't let me to pay for it. So I was like, well, must be something that they do with the foreigners or whatever. But then I realized that it was actually a very disrespectful of me, like to try to pay, because for them they cannot actually. This is deep Morocco. I mean, it's not
Right.
Tangier, it's not Marrakesh. It's like from the east coast towards the continent in a place like it's called Sidi El Yamani. Like there's no tourists there. So also for me, that was molding I mean, like at young age, changing my view on not just on this country. Like when I come back to my country, I'm not the same. So somehow for you, as is connected with what you were studying and doing, and is connected with everything that you are doing now, to have that at that specific moment of your life, to have that experience abroad, probably has a lot to do with what you're doing now, for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And it's like India, it showed me the best and the worst of people in many ways, Like I saw, like, oh man, I saw people, doing something pious, making a donation to the gods, pouring their offering in the river, while there are literal starving children beside them. Like that happened, and I was just like, my gosh, right? Or you see like
Mhm.
animals eating like there's just, the world is so raw in a place like India, and that kind of stuff still happens everywhere. We're just, it's out of sight, out of mind here where I am, more so where everything is there in your face. But so what also is in your face is when the people do good things, like I saw some incredible feats of charity where these people are going out and helping each other up, and like the whole crowd, like someone gets injured and the whole crowd deals with it. A fight breaks out and the whole crowd deals with it and determines what's just. You know, like for example, I was on the bus with my roommate Adelaide, and we had been avoiding the buses, but we were hanging out with this old Indian guy, and he's like, "You got to ride the bus at least once." So we all stuff ourselves into this
But
bus.
why? What's happening in that bus, man? It's like
we wanted to go somewhere, and we were trying to live an authentic experience. And this guy was trying to. He's like, "If you want the Indian
you sure?
experience, you got to try the bus." Okay, and we were going to this temple, so we get on this bus. I can't sit next to Adelaide. She winds up sitting next to me, like in front of me, but in another seat. And I can't see what's happening. There's so many people in this bus, like as many people as you could possibly fit. So I'm like this,
Yeah.
head down, not
It's
paying
not about
attention.
the seats. It's not about the
Right.
seats. Like it is
No,
like everywhere.
everywhere, as many people as you
Yeah.
could stuff in. So she's sitting, Adelaide is in her seat, and she's next to the aisle. And a gentleman starts grabbing her, starts trying to grope her. And she goes and elbows this guy. Well, an elderly woman next to her notices and stands up, starts screaming in Hindi or Marathi, I'm not sure, and starts pointing at the guy. And then the whole bus erupts. Several women take off their shoes and they start beating this guy. They push him to the front of the bus. They open the doors and they toss him out the moving bus. And like all of these people are like screaming at Adelaide and they're screaming at me. And one of these Indian guys who knows English, he's like, "This is India. We do not abide. No rape." I'm just like, whoa, you know, like thank you, but like, whoa. But that's the kind of stuff. If the group notices, you know, then stuff goes down,
Mhm.
you know, and everyone will help you out, you know, which is it's just kind of wild. So
Mhm.
there's so many weird things like that.
Yeah,
The
and
other big, go ahead, sorry.
no, please
The other
continue.
big thing that has sat with me for so long is I got to go to Amritsar, which is the holy capital for the Sikh faith. It's in the Punjab, and
Mhm.
you go to the Golden Temple, and it was just like you know, in India, everyone's pushing. There's lines. It's always not Amritsar, not the Golden Temple. Everyone was at peace. You know, we're waiting in line to go see the Golden Temple, to go see the Guru Granth Sahib, which is their big sacred book. And they're letting
Mhm.
the women and children walk forward. Like they're letting the women, like after being in India for like a year at this point, I'm like, anyone given courtesy is mind blowing. So when the whole crowd is given courtesy like this, it's just like, wow, is this? And it was just such a beautiful place. And then I got to take langar, which is the communal meal. And it was like, I'd never seen that many people sitting on the floor as equals. Everyone ate, everyone cleaned their plate, everyone moved and operated with respect. It was just like, yeah, it was that beautiful. It brought tears to my eyes, you know? It made me almost want to become a Sikh, but no. You know?
Yeah, and I guess like all of this, I will say this is comes to mind now that you are giving telling these stories. It's like obviously when you are studying all of this stuff that we're going to get into, this for you as a person at the same time to be able to experience different stuff that it has nothing to do with what you have been experiencing since you were a kid or whatever, like traveling. That's, I guess that's where I'm going. It will give you also something maybe that will make you understand better something that you don't know, as all of these things that we are going into, because we're not there physically, but as you get experience different experiences, you are more able to be open with what are you even reading, kind of thing,
Yeah,
if that makes
absolutely.
sense.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely. You know,
that's
it's
why I
like
wanted to ask you about this, because obviously it's related. I mean, you've been traveling, like of course, that gives you another point of view when you are studying all of this stuff.
a big thing about all of this, right? It's about, for me, so much about all of this kind of work is about trying to break free of the spooks. in the in the term of like Max Stirner. But like what I mean by that is like trying to break free of ideologies that are placed upon us that distort our reality for purposes of control or socialization. Okay, I don't want to, you know, what I learned and what I've been trying to do is like move away from my upbringing and expand my perspective to a global perspective. Try to bring in as many perspectives as I can to try to
Hmm.
see the world with less prejudice and more openness, you know, and it's always going to be a lifelong project and you'll always will fall short. But, you know, recognize like one thing I notice is people who don't travel are so much more likely to be bigoted and to be ignorant, you
Hmm.
know. And when you travel you're just forced to have to live a
Yeah,
different life, to
you
deal
need to
with things
adapt.
that are uncomfortable, you know.
Mhm. You need to adapt, and you need to be flexible, and you need to be like
Yeah,
uh, relaxed when you have to.
and you see
Even if,
how it can work, right? Like so often what I see is that people get stuck and they're like, you and I each have our own reality tunnel and then we share the same universe, right? So
Mhm.
many people cannot see outside their reality tunnel in any way, shape, or form. And when they see another person's reality tunnel and it doesn't look like theirs, they freak the F out and they think the world is falling apart. And
Mhm.
this, to me, is such the issue. We need to expand our reality tunnels. We
Yeah,
need to try and recognize that other people's tunnels work. And if you take the time to try and perceive through their tunnel, it's not so crazy, you know?
yeah. And one of the ways you can do that is just to go and take a flight ticket and go to somewhere that you don't know shit about, and
100%.
just stay there for a bit, and then you can
Yep.
then you tell me if you think the same as before of anything.
Such a good
It's true,
point.
man.
And I don't think I think 90% of people will change.
Mhm.
I mean, there always will be the stubborn and unwilling, but you know.
Okay, Snappy. So we were discussing the other day, like, thank you for sharing your stories about traveling, man. I always love to talk about traveling, and I could be talking with you about just traveling for 2 hours now, man.
Yeah.
But we have a plan. So, um, well, the other day I was talking with you. I sent you a message because of some stuff that have been happening in my algorithm or whatever. I'm seeing the this well, Saturn everywhere, like for some reason now is you get it from every kind of topic is related a bit with the contingency that we all know that is happening in the world right now. Somehow it brings up all of this idea of Saturnian cold or of Saturn itself. So so you start to think, because I'm not a scholar in any of this. So, but I know Saturn is a planet. I know there is some kind of things around it, mysterious stuff, whatever. I know is Kronos at the same time. I know a bit, superficially. So I sent you the message because I was so like, why all of this Saturn stuff is coming into to my algorithm? And well, now I understand a bit more why. But I would like for you to like, I know you have a presentation that you some slides that you prepare, so we take it from where, like, as you want, man.
Yeah, we'll
Tell us
start
about
just doing some introductory explanatory stuff. So we gotta
it.
explain a little bit what's going on with Saturn. Okay, so Saturn is the old ruler, right? So if we're going to understand Kronos, Saturn from the Greco-Roman tradition, in the earliest sources we have of Saturn, Kronos, would be Hesiod in his theogony. And how does Kronos show up in the theogony? He is the one who castrates Uranos with they take the four Titan pillars of the world and they pin Uranos down and they castrate him and divide him. And this act of castrating and dividing him separates the sky, the earth, and the seas. And it calls the Umphalos down to fall at Delphi. And from the foam of the blood that hits the sea, we have the birth of Aphrodite, right? This is Hesiod. Now, this particular myth is really incredibly foundational, and it forms the backbone of a lot of philosophical thinking, especially as it goes on throughout these traditions, all the way up into the present, in the early modern era with people like Nietzsche, right? So this idea of the cycles is kind of one of the big Greek monomyths, one of the most important stories, right? So this idea, it shows you the changing of the cycles of time and of the sun. So Saturn represents fundamentally one aspect of the sun. He is the sun in that primordial myth who castrates his father sky, right? But then he in the myth becomes displaced by his own son, Zeus. And in the story, what happens? There's a prophecy that says that Kronos' children are going to overthrow him. They're going to displace him. So rather than allow his children to displace him, he consumes his young, right? He prevents them from he's going to prevent them from being born. But Rhea, the great mother, she substitutes Zeus for a rock, and she hides Zeus in a sacred cave with these magic nymphs and the Kurites, these magic spirits of the earth. And they protect Zeus, and they bring him to Almathea, the goat mother, who gives him the magic of the lightning. And then he comes back, and what does he do? In a very parallel kind of story to Kronos, or to Uranos, he castrates Kronos. He castrates Kronos. Kronos is cast down into Tartarus, and now we see Zeus ascend the throne, right? Zeus ascends the throne. And then again, the story doesn't end there, okay? The cycle continues. So we have another version of this. So later on, Zeus has a magic twin sister named Metis, who is the good counselor. And she has a prophecy that her children, Zeus and her children, are going to overthrow Zeus. So to prevent this, Zeus consumes his sister. He eats her. But she still what ends up happening is Athena is not dead. So what ends up happening after he eats Metis is she has this massive headache. He has this massive headache. And so he goes to Hephaestus, and Hephaestus cracks open his skull, and out pops Athena. Out pops Athena. Okay. And now she is seen as this androgyne, a divine androgyne type figure. Okay. And so there's kind of this going from this primordial mother energy into this kind of, masculinized energy and out again. There's all these cycles and all of this descending of time and transition. So what we're always seeing with these Greek myths is this idea that, we have to look at it. Best way to look at this is to understand it through Macrobius. Macrobius writes this incredible book, and now we're jumping way, way, way far into the future, into Roman mythology. But Macrobius, he tells you the true nature of all of these deities according to their solar rites. So they're all various aspects of the sun. And this is where you start to get this clear understanding. So what we see is that things begin in Dionysian wildness. Dionysus represents the sun in the underworld that manifests the fresh fruits of spring. Then that sun evolves into the high point of noon, Apollo Helios. And that energy is perfection, or striving for perfection, reaching your height, okay? Then what happens though? Once you reach the height, you can't maintain that energy. And so eventually you turn into Kronos, into Saturn. So Apollo becomes Kronos. It tries to, rather than give up the power that it's made, rather than change or let go of the wealth, it tries to contain it, to control it, to keep it, and it consumes its children. But then what ends up happening is that energy is always overthrown in Dionysian frenzy. And then that cycle repeats again. We have a new burst of wildness. And Nietzsche talks about this a lot. And for me, the best way to understand this is actually to apply this kind of philosophical framework to like a cultural idea. For me, a really good one is rock music. Okay. So if we look at
Hmm.
rock music is born in Dionysian wildness, right? It's queer, it's black, it's radical, and it's F in the world. But then what do
Hmm.
we see? It starts to get refined and it starts to come into high art. It becomes the main art of of the Western society, and it rises to its Apollonian peak with a band like Pink Floyd or Rush. Right
Ah,
now, it's
okay.
high art. Okay,
Okay.
then it turns
Yeah,
into
you need a spark first that it will get refined
exactly when
in
it
time.
becomes Saturnian or Chronosian is when it starts to consume and rebel against its children. And we saw that with rock, right? You had all those terrible rock bands that would say, oh, rap sucks, disco sucks. And then what ends up happening? It's child hip hop and disco pop. They all wind up replacing it. They replace rock music, and rock hasn't fully died. It's now hidden away and it's no longer relevant. And
Mhm.
hip hop has replaced it as that height. And now we're seeing hip hop leave its Apollonian height and also turn into its own chronos because it's starting to consume its children. And we see this through
Ah,
someone
okay,
like,
okay. And I got the
you know,
analogy. Yeah,
as you
makes
start to
sense.
say, like, this is high art and this is how we define it. And what you do is not rap. What you do is not hip. Now you're doomed
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah.
You
And
know?
Snappy, like all of this, but you explain to us like the myth.
Mm.
But this will be something that it will be part of education, like at that time, isn't it? Like you will be teaching
Yeah.
this to kids for them to understand all of this that you're trying
Oh,
to
yeah.
explain to us. Like they will
You're
understand
hearing
that
these kind of,
in that in a
here's the thing.
philosophical.
When you see these kind of tropes of overthrowing the tyrant and the old man who won't give up his power, it's
Mhm.
always connecting you to this idea. And you'll see that if you read the Greek classics, this kind of theme will come up again and again and again and again, and in so many different ways and so many different variations. And they're all just reminding you or giving you a different perspective on that same idea or taking you
Mhm.
in a new expanding of it, right? This is kind of how mythology works in many ways, right?
Yeah, but I think that is a very important point because sometimes you like in modern day, like you will talk about mythology, and you will not understand that actually has a lot to do with how you will live your actual life. I mean, it's not just it has to do with to teach something through some stuff that is happening in a philosophical idea or whatever. But all of these myths had this is a question actually. All of these myths had like a role in education, isn't it? At
Oh,
that time.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So one of the
That's
things
I
we can
guess
talk about,
that's very important. I
you
think
ever heard of
like
this concept of the memory palace? And have you ever heard of the
mhm,
concept of like, so what you see in the ancient world, and this is still practiced in India, for example. So you'll see this
mhm,
all over the place in India. But if you have an empowered myth, it becomes the lingua franca, especially for people who are literate. People memorize this and they create memory palaces. So a memory palace is a way
uh,
for people, and you'll see a lot of different Greek people talk about this because these were methods for memorizing huge amounts of literature and for creating within yourself a whole mental library that you can access and play with. And this is developed through meditation skills and through repetition of song. And so, what we see in the ancient Greek world is that, like the hymns, the songs of Homer are not just about Homer. So you would utilize this to encode all kinds of different understanding. Homer would tell you when to plant your crops. Homer would tell you all about the transition of the sun, all about where the constellations are. All of this information is implanted in those songs. And then on
yeah,
top of that,
that's
all of these
amazing.
different all of these different professions, all of these different communities would develop their own way of utilizing the song because everyone knows it. So you have something that everyone knows, everyone remembers. So now you're trying to say you're a blacksmith and I'm a blacksmith, and we're trying to collaborate to make something. Well, if you know the song and I know the song and we sing it in harmony, we can balance. and we have certain songs for certain tools, and we incorporate our work to the rhythm of the song, and it informs everything we do. So this is why it's such a loss of culture and a loss of
Yeah.
life when they reject the myths. They don't just lose the myths, they lose the memory palace. You know?
And the information in multidimensional information, like it's not just a
Exactly.
date. Mhm.
Exactly.
That's great.
These are all
That's
things that are encoded,
amazing.
you know? And you still see this survive, like, you know, in a lot of nursery rhymes are like this. They're trying to teach you important information that you need to remember as a kid, you know? Or it's so much of mythology is like that. It's never there is the literal meaning, there is
Mhm.
the metaphorical meaning, and then there are the applied meanings. Like you know, this is the thing.
Applied meaning.
Applied
That, that,
meaning
that,
would be
that will
like
have
the
a
blacksmith.
direct relationship with the person that is actually engaging with it. Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. And all of these
Tech.
meanings are true. And this is why it gets so complicated when you're talking about myths. Okay, so what perspective are you approaching it from? You know? And
Mhm.
what are you talking about? And then you can even get into extended metaphor, right? Like in the Indian traditions, and this you also see in the Greek, though a lot of this has been lost, is they have this idea of extended metaphor, which they call in the Sanskrit vani. And it's this way to go into these true mythopoetic tropes and to expand an image into its ideal, you know, and that's what they're doing with a lot of this. It's really
That's
interesting.
just amazing. It's interesting and amazing. Like, yeah. And well, do you think you'll be okay if we go into, because
Yes. Yeah.
I have the
The only
control
the
here.
Yeah, you can bring
You
it up.
just
The
tell
only
me.
thing I
You just
also
tell me.
want to say is
Mhm.
about Saturn before we dive into this
Okay.
presentation is just to fully understand Saturn, okay, and what we're talking about when something becomes Saturnian is think of it as the old man tyrant who wants to send your kids to war, right? Who wants to maintain his own power even though he's a criminal. That
Mhm.
is the ultimate Saturnian image. And so I don't even need to say anything. You all see this image, and that's why it's everywhere in your mental state, because it's the current image defining our moment. We're
Yeah.
all under control of Saturn's thumb at this moment, and we're all watching him as he consumes his children. So,
And just to add a bit, just to add something small there, but so can we say, because obviously we can be judgmental about like everything you can say this is wrong, this is good, this is, but seems to me that the whole idea of having this Saturnian dynamic that will happen at some point is not telling you that it's something bad. It's telling you that it's something that is part of a cycle that it will happen. It's not like it's, like,
well, okay.
do I
So,
explain myself? I'm
yeah,
not sure.
yeah. Part of it is cyclical, part of it is cyclical, but part of it is also a failing because
Okay.
there is an extreme moral failing that happens, right? Like you can see the other side. There is this idea of the good king, and the good king is the one who hands over his crown. When the time comes, he doesn't resist change and he hands over his crown, right?
Okay.
Now that image is far less told within the myth, but it does exist. And there are real world iterations of this, like the
Okay, I
great
get it.
Polybius, right? Polybius gave up his crown and went and became a farmer, right? So this does happen. There
So
is an alternative.
you have this figure to be aware that it's there, but not like this will happen no matter what. It will be like you have to be aware that this will happen at some point if this other stuff is happening. I'm trying to understand what the myth was going, like what it was giving you as an educational tool.
Well,
I'm
you
trying.
know, I
You understand
think
what I mean?
Yeah, I think, now we're going to get into some mysticism. If we're getting into sort of the Hellenistic mystical mindset, there's this understanding that we're going through these cycles in order in order to return back to the intellect, to the and in order to exit this realm of time into timelessness or ionic life. But in order to achieve ionic life, You cannot fall into these, you have to break the cycle. You can't continue to fall into generation. Eventually, you got to break the cycle. You got to stop. You can't become Saturn. You got to say no and turn around.
It's like
right?
you have to be out of time.
Yeah. Eventually, you
Literally.
want to overcome this. Here's the
Yeah.
thing: is that the other thing that I want to talk about is like this is the great evil in that Hellenic worldview, is trying to stop time, trying to consume your children, right? Trying to resist death and change. Now, if we look at Christianity, okay, and we try to analyze it from this perspective,
Mhm.
what do the Christians want? They want to create a heaven on earth where you have an absolute hierarchical ruler who rules over all of us in perpetuity, where only in some iterations 130,000 get to rule over everyone as the absolute chosen hierarchy, while everyone else is a slave for all time. And there is no change, there is no growth. So in a Hellenic
Mhm.
mindset, this is the greatest of evil. That's needs to be rejected. It's anti-nature. That is pure Saturn, Chronos, and it needs to be castrated and turned back into Dionysus. You
Mhm.
know, right?
Yeah. Well,
So this
thank you.
tendency of
Thank you
fear of death,
for explaining to me.
right?
Yeah,
So you can bring up
because
the.
all of these
Go
topics,
ahead,
I'll go for it. Yeah.
but go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry.
No, I was just say like all of these topics, like for me, I'm very grateful that I can discuss it like with you, like I'm doing now, because obviously you can dive into it. You have a book of mythology. You can memorize every freaking myth you want. But you have to, like, you are now giving us like an Hellenistic point of view. So obviously you will have to try to understand it from a different point of view, like we're not talking about um, just a history. It was used as a tool, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
Perf-
And another way we could look at this too is like you could see like Attis or Astrea as sort of the anti-Saturn. So in the Attis myth, rather than fall perpetually into generation and try to maintain his wealth, he castrates himself and imitates the mother in order to return.
Mhm.
Or Astrea, at the end of her cycle, rather than maintain her power and maintain her empire, she sets herself ablaze and returns to the stars. She commits suicide, right? And this is something you see time and time again, is that death, that willed death, the willed castration, the ending. And we'll even talk about this when we get into Jesus here. So we should
Okay,
bring
let's
up
go.
the presentation.
Let's go. Okay, I'll try not to blow it.
So really what I want to talk about with this presentation is kind of like how Christianity kind of comes out of the magical world in this period of Roman Empire, and how all of the various magical elements around it influence Christianity. And then we'll talk about some of the Saturnian stuff throughout. But
Mhm.
mostly we're going to focus on Jesus as a magician and as a fraudster. Okay, so first what I wanted
Okay,
to do
buckle up.
is, so we can understand a bit of this, I created this kind of timeline that has sort of what I consider to be many of the key points. So 204 BCE, the Black Stone of Cybele is brought from Pessinus to Rome. Okay, brought from Pergamum to Rome. So this is when you get the cult of the Great Mother to Rome, and this is one of the first
Mhm.
and earliest solar cults to come to Rome. Okay, um, so that's really important. Then we get in 175 to 64, we have the reign of Antiochus IV, Epiphanes. So he's the guy who's widely considered with establishing the Commagene or the Comengine. I never can pronounce that word, but um, Commagene. It's a country
Ah,
that exists around
continue.
the ancient city of Samosata in modern day Armenia.
Okay.
And this was a really, really, really important place because Commagene is where we believe Mithraism comes out of.
Mhm.
So Antiochus IV. He's not quite a a Mithraist, but he creates a couple massive monuments that many scholars believe to be the beginning of Mithraism. So Commagene is really interesting because it's a cultural mixing pot between displaced Iranians and Hellenized Greeks and Hellenized Syrians. So you got Assyrian influence, and there's a lot of debate. People believe that Commagene, they spoke Aramaic, so there's a lot going on at this place. By the time we get to Antiochus I, he's widely considered the establisher of Mithraism, and he develops this sort of solar cult around his family and promulgates it through the building of all these ritualized sites. But as this, the country doesn't really survive very long, and Mithraism becomes picked up by various mercenary bands throughout the area and takes up in all sorts of places throughout the Roman Empire because of its affiliation with the military. And it spreads like wildfire. Part of the issue, though, with Mithraism is, Christianity decides to encode its mysteries in occulted language, whereas Mithraism rejects occulted language almost entirely. We do have a couple hymns that survive in archaeology, but there are no grand written works.
I'm sorry, what's the word you use? Like occultic language? Sorry, occultic. Okay,
occulted. So
occulted language.
When a language is occulted, it means that, like, I say one thing but mean another, right? So the Christians do this. The Christians do this in their texts. That's a way they're able to maintain their mystery but promulgate it at the same time. The Mithraists don't adopt this method. They don't write texts. So they're a lot harder to talk about. We do get, later on, you'll see syncretism with Mithraism, and we get texts out of that. But Mithraism proper remains hidden within its own mystery and remains largely studied through archaeology, okay? And through astrology of the day. We knew that they're really, really into astrology. So if you study the classic astrology texts of the Roman Empire, you're in effect studying major aspects of Mithraism, right?
And at this point, when we are talking about this, I'm just trying to put my mind in the map. This would be like Asia Minor, or like the eastern part of, like Turkey, modern Turkey, I guess.
Armenia, modern day.
Even
Armenia.
more. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Commagene is kind of like, it's closer to Syria. It's kind of in between Syria and Armenia, really.
Okay. Yeah.
It's hard when you're dealing with modern maps, right? And these are contested areas. So,
but for sure, it's not like Europe, like West, like
No,
it's not Italy at all.
No,
like we are in some place now.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Samosata.
Coming from
when
east.
I think of Commagene, I think of Samosata, which is the home and birthplace of the great Lucian, one of the greatest writers of all time, the inventor of science fiction. So, all right. But then we get, of course, the birth of Jesus, and it's debatable when he was born. We get the crucifixion under Pontius Pilate. Then we get Paul's conversion. By 33 to 36, we get Paul's conversion. Okay. So, we get possible persecution. We get Herod and Agrippa. There's all of this. This is a highly contested point because the Christians make a big deal out of this much later, and there isn't much evidence for it. Okay. We have the foundation of the church in Rome by Peter and Paul, right? And there's a historical community during Nero's reign that we know about. By 66, we have the Jewish revolt and the destruction of the temple in 70, right? And so that's really where we get the mass exodus of Jews all across the Mediterranean. And so this leads to a wide dispersal of a lot of these ideas, both Christian and Jewish, right? And it leads to what we call Yahwism, which is a form of, or Yahwehism, some people call it, but it's a form of Judaism that's not racially or not ethnically based, and it really becomes a huge player within the magical world. So a lot of these Jewish texts and Jewish ideas, especially the various names of God, make their way into the greater religious understanding at this time because of the diaspora of Jewish people. Okay.
Okay.
This is when we believe that the canonical gospels are written right after the fall of the temple as well, right? And it's also when people believe Q, but I don't really believe in Q. I just included it because Morton Smith includes it.
Q. But I'm sorry. What is Q?
Yeah. Okay, so Q is a theorized document that's never been proved to exist that accounts for many of the discrepancies in the Gospels. And it's believed that this is the source from which the canonical Gospels are pulling from, at least many of them. But it's a highly debated source, you know?
Okay.
There is clearly something that these people are pulling from. Is it a single source? Are they pulling from the same one? I don't know. And I push back on it personally because we don't have any physical evidence.
Mhm.
Okay, so around 90 to 100 is when Josephus writes his Antiquities, right? And there are references to Jesus, but these again are also highly debatable, okay? Because, you know, the Christians are rewriting history. They're rewriting history at this point. And Josephus, as the most prominent Jewish historian, gets rewritten a lot.
Okay.
Tacitus and Suetonius write about the Christians, Pliny's letter to Trajan. So this is where we start to see the first polemics against the Christians. Okay. 95 to 117. Yeah, so we did that. Sorry. The death of Apollonius of Tyana. So Apollonius of Tyana, some say he died, some say he was teleported, right? Most people put him around 80 years, and he is the closest parallel we have to a Jesus-like figure in the classical world. He's largely contemporary with Jesus within, 50 years or so. And we'll get into him later on in this when we're exploring these two characters. Okay, so Justin Martyr writes the dialogue with Trypho and Apologies, mentions Jewish anti-Christian polemic, and calls Jesus a magician, right? So now we're seeing the real beginning of like anti-Christian polemic as Christianity is really rising. 177, we get Celsus. He writes the true word, which is our first like serious criticism. And it survives to us largely through Christians trying to refute it. Like Origen writes a book called Contra Celsus, and it's him trying to refute Celsus, right? Clement of Alexandria writes his work. So this is where we get the secret gospel of Mark, right? At least the letter that refers to the secret gospel of Mark. So by 200, we're seeing they're still talking about all of this sex rights. They're talking about the boy with the linen. They're talking about raising the dead, Okay. By 200 to 250, we get the composition of the Greek magical papyri. And this includes the Mithras liturgy, but some scholars believe the Mithras liturgy is older, that it's older. Some people even believe it may preclude Mithras and was later rewritten to include Mithras. Okay.
And I'm sorry, like at this point, like the figure of Jesus was, because this is a thing that I have to be wrapped in my mind like last time, like this last year or so. Like we're talking about Christianity and talking about Jesus, but we're talking about not like different stuff now, isn't it? It's like when you talk about Jesus, you talk about Christianity. Christianity is not just about Jesus, isn't it? I'm sorry my ignorance in this topic, bro, but I need to ask you because I need to understand if, well, when you say here, like that they were still talking about something that happened, isn't it? Like this mystery rites and everything you were saying. Um, they are connecting all of this with Jesus. I don't think so. Like maybe it was obviously it came from before, like Jesus still is not like an important figure at this point, or You know
Well,
what I'm getting?
we're gonna get into that
I
once
am sorry. I'm
after
sorry.
after I do that. No, it's all good. It's all good. So after I do my timeline, we're gonna look and we're gonna explore a bunch from this book
Okay.
called Jesus the Magician by Morton Smith. And what Morton Smith largely argues is like there are two Jesuses. There's the Jesus as he's viewed by the Roman people and the Greek people, which is largely a psychopathic magician who's doing libertine sex rights and eating babies.
You
Like
got
this is
froze. You got froze like 5 seconds. I'm sorry. I
okay.
just get you when
Yeah.
you said eating babies, but
Well,
nothing
we'll get
more.
it. We'll get into the.
Could
There's
you?
a great quote I got from Morton Smith that really sums up the pagan, anti-Christian view and how they viewed the Christians around this time, right?
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, we'll see that in a minute. But they all of those accusations that Ammon makes, they're coming from the pagan world, right?
Okay.
Um, so let's see here. So we get, the secret gospel of Mark itself is presumably, Philostratus completes the life of Apollonius of Tyana. So this is an interesting point because some people claim that the Empress Julie Domna paid Philostratus to write this basically gospel of Apollonius in order to refute the gospels of Christianity, right?
Mhm.
Whereas I'm not sure about that. I see that this is just another one of these competing religions, and that this is another somewhat savior figure who develops a similar cult. But we'll look into that in a really
Okay.
deep way. Okay, we get Porphyry writes against the Christians, a really important text. Later emperors actually, like Constantine, bans the writings of Porphyry, burns
Mhm.
them because of they're anti-Christian.
This is
Okay,
300 BC. Anno
right.
Domini. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, common era, right? So
Yeah.
now we get by 306, you
Common.
get the reign of Constantine, right? Constantine orders the heretical works destroyed, and by 380 is when the official Roman of the official religion under the Roman Empire is now Christian. Okay, by 380.
Mhm.
So Emperor Julian, he's 331 to 363.
In the
And
middle.
he's Julian the Apostate, right? He converts to paganism and he rebels against Christianity, and he famously exposes the sacred rites of the Great Mother in his work, The Hymn to the Mother of Gods, and the sacred rites of Helios, Sol Invictus Mithras, in his hymn to King Helios. And he
Uh-huh.
does this because he believes the Christians are coming to destroy everything, right? And he just tells you flat out,
Have you
So
seen that fragment that is called like against the Galileans?
yes, we'll be
But
quoting some of it.
we don't know if it's he's writing, isn't it? It
People
was like
refute it, but you know, I just was reading this incredible book that we'll look into called The Complete Writings of Emperor Julian, and the scholars there believe that it's authentic.
okay.
Now, we don't have as much evidence for it as others, and it may have been edited, right? The thing with these texts is they've been sitting around for hundreds of years, so people could have messed with them. And that's probably more likely. Um, but we'll get into just the last couple of things here. So Julian composes the Hymn to the Mother of Gods in 362. He composes the Hymn to the King Helios, right? Um, and then these are kind of like the last things that I would call the early Christian era, right? We get Jewish magical texts, and we get, a bunch of suppression of the non-canonical gospels. So Theodore of Cyrus tries to destroy the Gnostics at this point. And this kind of ends the early Christian period. Now Christianity is firmly a Roman religion. They've firmly persecuted the people who have differing opinions, and they
Mhm.
largely have a canonical God, like they have a canonical Bible. Okay. So that sort of is my timeline. So this is the early Christian timeline,
Great.
starting with the Magna Mater cult. Okay. Just so we
Mhm.
have an understanding of where we are in the
It's
world,
perfect.
right? Yeah. So one of the things, what I wanted to start with, though, to take us back to that idea we were talking about with Saturn, is I wanted to look at this incredible book, or sorry, this incredible article by Hans-Dieter Betz, and it's called The Birth of Christianity as a Hellenistic Religion. And he outlines a couple of really important theories. And there's two theories I want to talk about in terms of the origins of Christianity that are important. So let me read here. It says, theories about new religions as the result of fraud by corrupted priests were common in Hellenism. These theories had old roots in the history of philosophy, that is, in ideas concerning the origins of culture and religion, going back to Democritus, Prodicus, and especially Critias. While Democritus and Prodicus explained the origin of religion as a result of misconceptions by the primordial human race, the rationalist Critias went further. He explained religion as a clever invention by wise statesmen in order to make the unruly primitive race observe the laws. Even when no witnesses were present, these statesmen introduced the notion of a supreme deity, able to see and hear everything humans plan or do, and to punish or reward them in accordance with their behavior. When people fell for this ploy, religion proved to be an extremely useful instrument for maintaining law and order. In Hellenism, to leave aside earlier periods, this idea of inventing religion for political or other purposes loomed large in the minds of many religious operators. The theory, often connected with Euhemerus of Messene, opened up possibilities for either reforming and reshaping existing cults or constructing entirely new ones. The new cults of Serapis and Sabazios, the Hellenization of Mithras by Antiochus of Commagene, the transferal of the Magna Mater from Asia Minor to Rome, or the foundation of the oracular mysteries of Glykon by Alexander of Abnotius, are but a few examples from many that could be named. Some of these new foundations or reform cults had overtly political aims, while others served the purpose of missionary expansion of religion. Creating new religions proved, of course, most useful for the Hellenistic ruler cults. Okay? We explicitly see this with the romances of Alexander. Okay, Alexander was deified and turned into a cult, and they created fake literature to promote him as a deity and to convince people to worship him. And if you look at the Bible emulates the romances of Alexander. Okay, it's coming out of this tradition, and many of the Greeks saw this and called it out to the point where we see passages in the Bible itself reacting to this belief that they're frauds, that they're making it all up, right? And that they're a joke. One of the things that they bring up here is really interesting is Alexander of Abonnut. I can't say that, but Alexander, Glykon of Alexander, okay? So this comes to us from Lucian of Samosata, okay? He writes a dialogue, or he writes a dialogue about this. And Alexander was a cult leader who had a giant fake snake puppet and would put it in a cave and would utilize it and move it with all kinds of ropes and pulleys. And he had a whole fireworks system, and it was all for ripping people off. And he tried to cause an uprising in Rome, and he was crucified for it. You know, so this kind of stuff was happening. Right? There's always been cult leaders. There will always be cult leaders. These people who claim that they're God. And the Greeks and the Romans were well aware of this and had dealt with these people before. Okay? So let's continue. The polemics by Lucian of Samosata, Celsus, Porphyry, and Julian the Apostate show that these theories about the origin of Christianity must have been widespread in the 2nd to 4th century. Accordingly, the original fraud was contrived either by Jesus or by Paul, who, through rather familiar magical tricks, duped the gullible and dumb disciples and then the simple folk by constituting the early Christian communities. So this was the radical belief within the Hellenistic world. Jesus was a cult leader, and he was ripping people off. Okay? So let's go. The rationalist Critias went further. He explained religion as a clever invention by wise statesmen in order to make the unruly primitive race observe the laws, even when no witnesses were present. These statesmen introduced the notion of a supreme deity able to see and hear everything humans plan or do, to punish or reward them in accordance with their behavior. Okay? And now I wanted to bring in some Plato. Plato, the most important philosopher of the Western world, the philosopher that everyone is reading, everyone is talking about and debating. There is no world in which the Christians are not reading Plato, even the earliest Christians, okay?
Okay.
Could we devise one of those convenient falsehoods of which we were just now speaking, a single noble lie which we may persuade the rulers themselves to believe, if possible, and if not them, the rest of the city? Okay, the noble lie. We'll continue with this idea here. I shall try to persuade first the rulers and the soldiers and the rest of the city that the upbringing and education we gave them were like dreams. In reality, they were being fashioned and reared within the earth. So these teachings are fashioning them. We are socializing people through mythology, right? They themselves and their weapons and the rest of their equipment. When they were completely formed, the earth their mother delivered them. Now, therefore, they must take thought for the land they live in, as for their mother and nurse, and defend it against any attack, and think of the other citizens as their earth-born brothers. So they create this myth in order to unite them within community, right? And it gets even more. They utilize this lie to create hierarchical caste division. And you will cause them to repeat this saying, you are all brothers in the city, but when God was fashioning you, he mixed gold into those of you who are capable of ruling, so that they are most precious, silver into the auxiliaries, and iron and bronze into the farmers and other craftsmen. If ever the guardians detect that one of their own offspring has been born with a mixture of iron or bronze, they will not pity him, but will assign him the rank suited to his nature and thrust him out among the craftsmen or farmers. And conversely, if from the latter a child is born with gold or silver, they will honor and raise him up to the guardianship of auxiliary service. For there is an oracle that the city will be ruined with an iron or bronze man guards it. So he wants to create a whole law in order to manifest a form of hierarchy, but he even allows within this hierarchy a little bit of movement, but he gets to choose, right? If I see gold in someone, we'll let them become one of the gold people. But, right, it's all about manipulating people to control them, right? It is the duty of the lawgiver to persuade the citizen if he can, and to compel them if necessary, to believe that the soul is immortal and that the gods are good. To affirm that these things are so, I have to describe them, is fitting for a man who believes that the soul is immortal, and it is a noble risk. So another idea, you've all heard of the noble lie, but there's also the noble risk, where it's not quite a lie. You're just fudging a bit. You're taking a risk. You're trying to manipulate people with subtlety. If they poke it too hard, they'll notice. Are you willing to take the risk? Right? Your soul is immortal. We tell you this lie so you don't fear death, but we don't know. Right? You know? So this is literally the philosophers bullshitting to control people and telling you how they can do it. Right?
So and also feels like a bit of how can you create this concept of faith?
Right. Exactly. How can you create faith and manipulate faith, right? Because the power of belief, people, when they believe in something, can move mountains. And if you make them believe in each other, you make them believe in an idea, all of a sudden you can shape history, you can shape reality, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So now we got to get into the man himself, Nietzsche. So Nietzsche is one of the most important critics of Christianity. And I'm going to be talking about him in summary through Hans-Dieter Bates, but you can find all this in his work, The Antichrist. Okay, so Hans-Dieter Bates, he just summarized it really well. It says, the disaster of the gospel was not the fact that Jesus was crucified. His death, rather, was the seal of confirmation put on his life. The real disaster came when the disciples, crude in small minds, all of them, and profoundly shaken up by the events, resented their perception that Jesus' death meant failure of their beliefs and expectations. These beliefs and expectations, however, were those of Judaism. Unable to bear such consequences, they activated the propositions of their popular Jewish expectations and fabricated what became the origins of the Christian religion. It was their form of revenge when they lifted Jesus up in such an extravagant way and separated him from them. Just as formerly the Jews, out of revenge against their enemies, separated their God from them, lifted him up to the highest, the one God and the one Son of God, both products of resentment. Thus, Christianity as such is apostasy, a degenerate concoction out of Judaism and Hellenistic paganism. Okay? We got to continue, though, just so you get the point fully.
Yeah.
What did Paul do? Activating the full power of his sinister, Pharisaic mind. Paul described the historical Jesus, the life of Jesus, the example, the teaching, the death, the meaning, and the integrity of the gospel. Nothing was left when this impostor comprehended out of hatred what alone he needed, not the reality, not the historical truth. And again, the priestly instinct of the Jew committed the same great crime against history. He simply canceled yesterday and the day before yesterday of Christianity. For himself, he invented a history of primitive Christianity. Moreover, again, he falsified the history of Israel so as to make it appear as the history of his act. All prophets spoke of his Redeemer. Later, the church falsified the history of mankind, making it over into the prehistory of Christianity. So this is the most important point for this whole Saturnian thing. What am I getting at? That the Saturn stuff begins really with Paul, because what do we see is the failure of when Jesus doesn't become the Mashiach and he doesn't bring about Olam Da and that hierarchical one world government and peace on earth, and not everyone dies in the apocalypse. Paul goes ape and he creates a whole religion to justify his belief. Rather than give up his belief, he rebels against reality. He rebels against reality. He becomes Saturn and he eats history. He does everything to try and stop time and to prevent the death of Jesus. Everything is about reliving and going back to that moment. They're constantly bound to his death and they can't give it up. That dying and suffering God can't die. He has to become king. And so they reject history. They haven't advanced since that moment in terms of thought, you know, because that's really what they're about. They can't get over the fact that their savior didn't do what they thought he was going to do. You know?
Okay, I understand what you meant. Like, absolutely connected what you started saying to us like 1 hour ago, man. I get the point. It's the same story.
That, you know, a lot of this is this radical, you know, I mean, we're going to get into Jesus as the magician. I'm not letting Jesus off the hook. But I think a lot of the great, horrific stuff is this. It's the Saturnian mindset. It's the Saturnian mindset that hates progress and hates death and refuses to change and adapt and admit when they make a mistake. They refuse reason. That is the fundamental evil, you know?
Yeah. And also it was like, as you gave us the whole time frame and everything, like we can see the picture a bit, like it was an opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
And they took the opportunity of, okay, this is working. This is some kind of tech that we can use on people, and they went with it.
What else does Nietzsche argue? We're not going to get into it at this point, but if you go and you read the Antichrist, he argues that they turn Christianity into the ultimate anti-pagan, anti-woman idea. And it seeks to destroy the pagan and the woman in order to empower itself. And that's how it rejects reality and time, you know, and it's literally becomes, and the reason why Rome adopts it is because they can use it for genocidal control purposes. You know, they can use it to enforce their own patriarchy, and they can displace and dismiss whole swaths of people. You know, you get this uniting of pagan universalism, but with the rigidity of Jewish absolutism, you know? So you're either in or you're out. If you're in, you're one of us and we love you. But if you're out, I can now kill you and destroy you and take everything you've ever had, right? And we see this, like, for example, you know, your history of your continent, the Requimento of the Spanish, where they literally say, we're going to come to the New World and we're going to take and rape everything unless you submit to Jesus. And they shout this at the indigenous people in Spanish without even ever telling them who Jesus was. This is the debauchery.
I would like to say, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I would like to say at the same time that here in my country, here in Chile, the people in Araucanía, the Mapuche people, which is like the people you're talking about, one of them, because we had a lot of different ones. They're still fighting. They don't think that they were conquered. They are still in the south fighting the police. For them, the police is the Spanish. They don't make any difference. They haven't been, you know. So
They haven't been
that's
conquered.
what the government is doing for ages now. They keep them in some spot, but there's a lot of conflict all the time. Right now, probably is something happening, you know. So yeah, they are refusing to accept any kind of new religion or new kind of course they took the land from them, but they had some still, and they are claiming the land still now. And this happened 600 years ago or 500, you know, and
That's the power of
they're still
people,
giving the fight, bro. So I
right?
just giving that small. I have an
Well,
heritage
well, look at this,
from indigenous
like
people here.
that Medea cult is old as dirt, comes to us from ancient Siwa, right? Maybe even further in Africa, who knows? But that's as old as we can go. And it still survives,
Mhm,
real powerful ideas, real powerful things, culture and language. You don't just wipe this out,
mhm,
Um, that's why the Catholics try to incorporate everything. They try to universalize and steal people's religion rather than wipe it out.
mhm. And what do you think, Sabi, like at this? Sorry, just a
Mm.
little thing. At
Sure.
this time that we're speaking now, like when is this transition for like Rome is becoming like Christian and like the 380 you said, isn't it? Like around that time frame. So what will be the average person? It will be like a educated person. It will be like, what do you think? Like 80% illiterate or like
No,
50-50 or like there are still very prepared people as the
I
educated
mean,
people. What do you think it was the context to be able
it's
to
it's
pull
it's
out like to pull off with all of this scam we're talking
the
about?
the Roman Empire is so vast at this time, it's hard to imagine.
Oh, it's true.
Okay.
It's true. Yeah,
Number one.
it's true.
So when you're talking about the Roman Empire, it's like where and when, or like where, right?
Yeah,
There's a ton
exactly.
of
You're right.
illiteracy at this time, but I always think that illiteracy is it's always overhyped, always
Yeah,
overhyped.
I think the
And
same.
even when people aren't reading, they're transmitting the text in other ways. Like
Mhm,
most of the gospels also act as theatrical performances, right? We see the same thing in the cynical literature, right? Within the satire, within like the Menippean satire. A lot of that
mhm,
stuff was meant to be performed. A lot of Lucian, even though it's written dialogue first, is performed. It's
mhm,
performed and so that these people can get paid, right?
mhm.
And the
Yeah,
cynics are
I'm
building off of the Christian tradition. Jesus dresses like a cynic. He's got a toga like a cynic. He wears a wallet like a cynic. And he rebukes people on the street corner like a
yeah,
cynic begging for food, like a cynic.
amazing. I was I was asking you because like as we see that something happened that it was like a window for something that was as you were saying before, like if you go very gentile and putting this idea in your mind, at the end this will happen and we will be able to control of these people. We'll create this concept that it will stay for 2000 years. So that's what I was asking now, like to myself and now to you, like how was the like the average education of the people, but yeah, probably they were still, seems like after all of this we're talking about, like the illiteracy went up, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Not
I mean,
before. Mm,
we got to understand that the people of this time, their entertainment is the telling of stories, and
mhm,
everyone is telling stories. So this is the big thing I think that people always underestimate. Even the people who can't read the Bible know the Bible, right? Even the people who can't read Homer know Homer, right? All of these stories are existing in that ecosystem, and there's not a lot of competing entertainment, you know. So bards are the thing, you know. So they're getting this from all over the place, right? Um, and you know, the
Yeah.
Christians are really interesting because they put their mystery in text, right? We saw with the Mithraic cult, they don't want to put their mysteries in text. They think that that'll dilute the mystery, and we see this especially with the older mother cult as well. The mother cult does not put their mystery in text largely. You
And
know,
you
we
cannot
get a
say anything
few
about it.
outliers. Well, you get interesting things like you get the Golden Ass of Apuleius, right? Which is, it's a comedy text, it's satire, and it's a novel, but it's also a deeply magical religious text, you know? But most people don't read it as such, right? Uh, and it's like they're not passing their mysteries on through text generally,
Yeah,
you
no, but
know?
I guess also because the whole thing is you need a bunch of other stuff happening at the same time to be able to make it happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely, right? It's not like you see in some of these Christian cults where it's like belief in Jesus is enough. That's not happening in these
Okay,
mystery
okay.
like belief is not enough in the mystery cult, you know?
Mhm.
In any
That's
mystery
okay.
cult. You got
Well,
to
even
do the
Julian,
right.
Julian was saying that, like very specifically, he said that in the one that I was telling you about before. I don't know if he wrote it, but
Mm,
he was talking about that. We don't believe we do the stuff, you know. We don't need to
right.
believe because we're doing it.
So I wanted to just quote this interesting quote here. This comes to us from Marvin Meyer,
Mhm.
who's a really important Gnostic scholar. And he's one of these characters. He actually goes farther than Morton Smith. Morton Smith makes a lot of apologetics for the Christianity being a unique religion. And this guy pushes it further. So what I wanted to show this is because he connects Jesus to these other dying and rising gods. So it says, uh, to this contention, we may respond by enumerating several examples of deities from the mystery religions who may not rise or be resurrected in a Christian sense, but who still provide in their deaths and lives hints of the continuation of life or the manifestation of new life. For example, here we ignore matters of dating. Osiris may not actually rise, but he does exist in the realm of the dead as the ruler of that realm. And such objects of the grain Osiris may proclaim more graphically the growth, rebirth of grain and the power of Osiris. So there's all this dying and rising. He is the grain and he comes
Mhm.
back with the sun, right? So even
Mhm.
though it's not a literal rebirth, he comes back as the grain with the sun. When Lucius is initiated into the mystery of Isis, this is from the Golden Ass, according to Apuleius's Metamorphoses, he undergoes a nocturnal death experience by passing through the realm of death, right? The realm of Osiris, and emerging dressed like the rising sun to celebrate his initiation, as if it were a birthday in the morning. Okay? So you see him die, rise, born again with the sun.
Mhm.
Again, the Kori may not actually rise, but she returns mythically to the land of the living from her yearly sojourn in the underworld. It is not a surprise to hear Marcus say in Cicero's De Egibus, we have learned from them, that is, the mysteries, meaning the Eleusinian mysteries, the fundamentals of life, and have grasped the basis not only for living with joy, but also for dying with a better hope. Once again, the Mithraic bull may not actually rise, but archaeological monuments, such as a stone carved in
And
bas relief. Hmm?
this is Cicero. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
That because well, it's a very known name.
Right.
We know it was a very influent person in Roman time when he was being
Absolutely.
initiated.
Oh, yeah.
And he was saying this.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
amazing.
So, Heddernheim, Germany shows heads of grain growing from the dying bull, perhaps as a manifestation of life in the face of death, right? Just like we saw with Osiris, the grain rising, just as we see with the Kori and with Demeter, the grain rising. More precisely, life in the tail of death. Yet again, Attis may not actually rise, but according to Arnobius of Sicca's Adversus Nationos, After his death, a concession was granted that his body should not decay, that his hair should ever grow, that the very smallest of his fingers should live alone, react by continued motion, right? If we look at the version of the Attis story told by Julian in the Hymn to the Mother of Gods, he achieves apotheosis and becomes the Great Mother herself. He achieves ionic life. He transcends. So it's not a death, but a transcendent, right? We may add these to the examples. The related observation that specific mention of rebirth is made in Apuleius' Metamorphosis, the Mithraic inscriptions at Santa Prisca, on the Torabolium and the Creobolium, while the so-called Mithras liturgy, right? The Mithras liturgy from the PGM, which is not just Mithraic, it's the whole magical tradition of the time combined, refers to one who is transformed by immortal birth and is born again in thought, and they rise like the sun. At the end, we're going to go through the whole Mithras liturgy because that is so wild.
I was going to
tell you
to go into it, but
it's the Jesus. It's what happens to Jesus. Jesus is doing the Mithras liturgy, almost certain. Yeah, just straight up. Okay, so I wanted to have this quote here. This comes to us from the Golden Ass, and this shows you at this time the syncretism that's happening and the idea that all these gods and goddesses are coming into this kind of, you have this holy trinity of the family, right? Julian tells us this. It's Helios, Cybele, and Attis, right? Or Sol Invictus, Magna Mater, and Attis, or Dionysus, right? And this is kind of the defining trinity, the defining cult of Rome that Christianity just kind of steals, just takes its cover and sticks it over top of its face. Okay, so this is at the very end of Apollonius of the Golden Ass. It says, this is the Great Mother when she finally reveals herself. She says, behold, Lucius, here I am, moved by your prayer. I am mother of all nature and mistress of the elements, firstborn of the ages and greatest of powers divine, queen of the dead and queen of immortals, all gods and goddesses in a single form, who with a gesture commands heaven's glittering summit, the wholesome ocean breezes, the underworld's mournful silence, whose sole divinity is worshipped in differing forms with varying rites under many names by all the world. There at Pessinus, the Phrygians, firstborn of men, call me Cybele, mother of the gods. In Attica, a people sprung from their own soil, call me Crapopian Minerva. In sea-girt Cyprus, I am Paphian Venus, Dictina Diana to the Cretan archers, Stygian Proserpine to the three-tongued Sicilians, at Eleusis, ancient Ceres, Juno to some, to others Bellona, Hecate, Rhamnusia, or the races of both Ethiopias, first to be lit at dawn by the rising sun's divine rays, and the Egyptians too, deep in arcane lore, worship me with my own rites and call me by my true name, Royal Isis. Royal Isis, right? So
Royal Isis.
All of those mother gods, all of the mother gods are one mother god. All of the solar gods are one solar god. All of the dying and rising gods are one dying and rising god. This is where that Roman religion is going at this point, right? All of these cults are fighting for who gets to determine it, but this is where the people are going and what the various people are thinking.
Yeah.
This is why it was easy, not easy, but this is why Christianity can come in at this time.
But can I ask you just a small question that I always have when that topic comes, which is like the importation of the Great Mother to Rome. Like what happened, like they deliberately at some point, this was before probably the time frame we're talking about, obviously, but
it was our defining first thing, 280 BC. 280 BC, they take Cybele from Pessinus and they bring her to the Palatine Hill.
And like, just in a nutshell, why? What was the point?
So they were being destroyed by Carthage, and so they went to the oracle. They went to the Cumaean Sibyl, and she told them that they needed to bring the Great Mother and install the cult of the Mother. And this is something that we see in Rome that happens a couple times. in their earliest history, right? Rome is a multi-ethnic, multicultural place. It's made up of the Sabines, the Etruscans, the Latins, all of
Mhm.
these different communities that are coming together. And if you look at Numa, so much of his work is uniting these various religious doctrines and coming up and bringing them into this cohesion, right? There's Pelasgian, Etruscan, Sabine, Latin, all of these different things that need to come in, you know. And so this is kind of a very Roman thing to bring in new idea and to refine it. And so
So
when
they
they're
thought,
told,
so
go
they
ahead.
thought like if we bring this way, it will unite us in this problem we are having with North Africa.
I don't think they thought that
I
far
never.
ahead. I mean, maybe
Okay.
some people did, but this is the Oracle said we need to do it, and we're doing it. We're that desperate.
Oh,
We're
well,
that
that
desperate,
gives you okay. Not, I
right?
didn't know that. Like it was an oracle. Just said you should bring. Yeah,
The
I actually knew
Kumean
that.
Sibyl said, "Do this,
Yes,
and
yes,
this
yes,
will
yes,
save you
yes.
from
Well,
Carthage."
if the oracle is saying it, that's what you do, bro.
Right?
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
okay, okay,
And
okay.
as we saw, right, like this Magna Martyr cult becomes so huge within Rome. It never, well, it almost becomes the dominant religion at one point under Elagabalus or Heliogabalus, right? And he was the emperor, I believe it's like 220 or something. Yeah, 220, 220. So before Julian, right? But Julian is in the same cult and he studies in the same place. He also goes to Pergamum, where Elagabalus is from. You know, and Elagabalus tries to do the rites of Cybele. He tries to become the divine androgyne. You know,
Mm.
he tries to imitate Attis, right? We're getting, it gets really wild, you know, with Elagabalus, you know. Um, and they were really upset, you know. There was a lot of like, the Romans are very patriarchal, you know, not always. Like you see a guy like King Numa who's not, but if you look at Romulus, right? If you look at its foundation, they're very war driven. They're very patriarchal driven.
Yeah,
So there's all of this hatred for the great. They bring in the great mother cult and then they hate it and they're terrified of it. You
yeah.
know,
That's always it always got into my mind that whole idea and the conflict with Carthage and never have understood it like that much. But as you were saying, the oracle said so. There's not much to ask about, like after an oracle says, but yeah, this is like Hannibal, isn't it? Times,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Hannibal
Well,
times. Yeah.
they had a
Hannibal
problem.
is, yeah, they had a serious problem, right?
Yeah,
They had a serious problem. So now I want to get into this incredible book, Jesus the
yeah.
Magician
Please.
by Morton Smith. So Morton Smith, you know, I consider him next to Ammon to be the best scholar that talks about this kind of stuff, who actually tries to do it. And I know he gets a lot of criticism, but I love him. So we're going to dive into his book here. And he really gets into this idea of Jesus as a magician. So he says, Jesus the magician was the figure seen by most ancient opponents of Jesus. Jesus, the Son of God, was the figure seen by that party of his followers, which eventually triumphed. The real Jesus was the man whose words and actions gave rise to these contradictory interpretations. Okay. The picture of the world common to Jesus and his Jewish Palestinian contemporaries was wholly mythological. Above the earth were heavens inhabited by demons, angels, and gods of various sorts. The many gods whose existence Paul conceded in Corinthians 8.5, and among whom he counted the God of this age. In the highest heaven was enthroned the supreme God Yahweh, God par excellence, who long ago created the whole structure and was about to remodel or destroy and replace it. Beneath the earth was an underworld to which most of the dead descended. There too were demons. We should presume that almost all Palestinian Jews of Jesus' time thought themselves involved in the mythological cosmic drama. That Jesus did so is not merely a matter of presumption, it is supported by the unanimous evidence of the Gospels. So Jesus is operating in this magical worldview, and he's somewhere between this pious rebel political figure and this cannibalistic magician. You know, this is what Morton Smith is arguing.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now this is where we get into what he says, how the Greco-Roman world viewed Jesus. Says, now at last, putting the data from the Gospels and the other sources together, we can sketch the life of Jesus the magician as it was pictured by those who did not become his disciples. So it's important to understand this. This is the outsider Greek Roman view that's squigged out by Jesus. Okay. The son of a soldier named Panthera and a peasant woman married to a carpenter. Jesus was brought up in Nazareth as a carpenter, but left his hometown and after unknown adventures arrived in Egypt, where he became expert in magic and was tattooed with magical symbols or spells. Returning to Galilee, he made himself famous by his magical feats, miracles he did by his control of demons. He thereby persuaded the masses that he was the Jewish Messiah and or the Son of God. Or the son of a god, sorry. The son of a god, a very important distinction.
Yeah.
Although he pretended to follow Jewish custom, he formed a small circle of intimate disciples whom he taught to despise the Jewish law and to practice magic. These he bound together into himself by ties of love, meaning sexual promiscuity and participation in the most awful magical rites, including cannibalism. They had some sort of ritual meal in which they ate human flesh and drank blood. Surrounded by this circle, he traveled from town to town, deceiving many and leading them into sin. But he was not always successful. The members of his own family did not believe him. When he went back to Nazareth, his townspeople rejected him, and he could do no miracle there. Stories of his libertine teaching and practice leaked out and began to circulate. The scribes everywhere opposed him and challenged his claims. Finally, when he went to Jerusalem, the high priests had him arrested and turned him over to Pilate, charging him with the practice of magic and with suggestion. Pilate had him crucified, but this did not put an end to the evil. His followers stole his body from the grave, claimed he had risen from the dead, and as a secret society, perpetuated his practices. So this is, and Smith gives you tons of evidence for this perspective, okay, from all these various polemics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're going to get now into the Eucharist. So the Eucharist, right, is one of the most important magical rites, and it has direct parallels to various magical spells.
Can I make a small question?
Yes.
Because I don't really. I mean, I think I know what is the Eucharist. I'm not. I've just been in a church when I've been in a, in somebody's wedding or something. So I don't really know. But the Eucharist, what is it? Like, I know that they perform it now, like it's a normal
so
thing
it's a magical
church.
ritual that transforms the bread, that cracker and the wine into Christ. And this is a literal transformation.
Perfect.
In the Catholic rite,
Both of them are the Eucharist. You will eat the small thing, and you will drink the wine.
Yeah.
That's the Eucharist.
So, yes, that's the Eucharist. Okay. So I mean, this
Thank you.
Well, usually, like, you just eat the body, and the blood is reserved for the priests in the Catholic tradition. Some Catholic traditions, they'll give out the blood. It really, really depends. Like in the classical Latin masses, they would be doing this behind you. You don't even get. They're doing this whole thing to make the stuff become magical. They're raising it up to God, and then they come around and they give it to you.
I'm sure. I was just asking you about about how they do it now.
Right.
Like to understand,
right.
Like, what is it,
how they do it now. Now you just wait in a big line, you put your hands out and you eat the cracker.
You eat a piece of a cracker,
Then you go pray, right?
Exactly. That's the Eucharist. Right. Okay.
That's the modern Eucharist.
Nowadays.
Eucharist. Okay. So the Eucharist is a simple report of a familiar magical operation, giving enchanted food to cause love. Often the food is identified with the body and or blood of a god with whom the magician is identified. Thus, the food becomes also the body and the blood of the magician. Whoever eats it is united with him and filled with love for him. So we get this claim with Jesus that even, you see this within the occulted tradition. There's this guy named, you see this with Crowley and with the Lima, and I can't remember the guy's name, Clement de Saint Mark, I believe his name is. But they argue that the earliest Christians are actually seed eaters, sperm eaters,
Mhm.
and that they're engaging in oral sex rites, and
Okay.
that there's a magical transformation of power through the semen, and they're all consuming the semen of Christ. And there's a belief that if you can go through this priestly lineage, you're still consuming the same seed, right?
Okay. Okay. So you're going to become also the giver.
But we see this in all kinds of different magical rites. So you see this a lot in the Indian traditions where, if I get something from the guru and
Yeah.
then,
It's like the Inca,
I'm
bro.
getting in the essence of the guru. I'm getting the essence of the guru, and this connects me to the guru across
Mm.
these lineages of time and space, right?
Yeah.
So let's
But yeah,
continue.
but that in that idea, it will be a person that is above you, and it will give you that, you know. So it's
Yes,
always like a hierarchical thing.
hierarchy.
Because
Yes.
if you think about the Inca, he will go to war and he will lead the heart of the guy that he just killed to have his strength, but it's not the same
No.
because the other dude could kill him also, you know. Like
Right. This is what you get, these chains of like magical inspiration within a lot of these guru type cults. And this occurs both east and west, right? And
Mhm.
these chains are maintained through forms of magical tradition. And often that consists of the consumption of something from the guru, you know? It's
Yeah,
gross. You see this
yeah.
all over the place, right? Okay. So there are many good analogous rites in which the essential actions are the same, but the identifications are not made explicit. One from the Diadem of Moses also invokes Yahweh Sabaoth Adonai. Okay, so all Jewish type names. These
Mhm.
texts are the closest known parallels to the text of the Eucharist. So I actually grabbed the Diadem of Moses from the PGM and another similar spell from the PGM. So just we can get a take a look at some of
Okay.
these similar rites. So the
Yeah.
Diadem of Moses, what does it say? It says, take the plant snapdragon and hold it under your tongue while lying asleep, and rise early before you speak to anyone. Recite the names and you will be invisible to everyone. But when you say them over drinking cups and give them to a woman, she will love you, since the spell has power over everything. Aresculus, and then he tells you all these magical words. What you wish,
Mhm.
say, get her for me. So he's arguing that Jesus was doing possession magic, demonic possession magic on his followers, making them drunk on himself through this kind of magic. This is the argument that
Mhm.
Morton Smith is making, right?
Yeah, I know, and obviously it's related also with she will love you. It's a
Well,
sexual
there's this whole thing about
connotation.
when you look at she will love you. There's the whole sex thing, remember? And Jesus is accused of being in the sex cult where he's sleeping with all his followers, right? And there's also, just this implication too of these magical manipulation rights, drug rights, where you're taking away people's mental faculties, right? Right? There's all of this potential implication, you know? And the idea is we see this too with this idea of like when you look at demonic or daimonic magic, you have to let the demon in. You have to invite the spirit in. And we see these various Greek sources saying that Jesus is a magician wielding demons and getting people possessed by demons to fall for him, to be, so he is imprisoning people through demonic magic. Through this Eucharist, he is literally, you're inviting him in and you're consuming his body and he's possessing you. Okay? That's what is going
Yeah, yeah.
on.
Okay.
So let's look at the cup spell from the PGM. It says, say the spell that is spoken to the cup 7 times. You are wine, you are not wine, but the head of Athena. You are wine, you are not wine, but the guts of Osiris, the guts of Ao. And then they go through the magical words, who have been stationed over necessity. At whatever hour you descend into the guts of her, let her love me for all the time of her life, right? Again, you're binding people, right? And we'll see later, like Athena is directly connected to Cybele, right?
Therefore, oh, will you descend into the guts of her? Let her love me.
Isn't it wild? Isn't it wild?
You all the time of our life. Oh, yeah, it's
And
one
necessity,
at
right?
least.
That's a goddess. That's the goddess Ananke, a primordial goddess, that force that calls us into life, right? Cosmogonic Eros, right? It gets really, really wild. But yeah, so let's keep going here
Mhm.
with Smith. He says, where did this figure come from? Why is he? Now we're going to talk about this idea of the Son of God. Okay, so we're seeing that Jesus is doing these magical rites that are comparable. And Smith and the Greeks of that era think that Jesus is poisoning people in order to drug them and make them fall in love with him. Okay. So, but now
Mhm.
we're going to talk about this idea of a son of God, and he's going to get into what that potentially actually means. So, where did this figure come from? Why is he only a son of God and not a god? To answer these questions, scholars have looked to Greek and Latin material. Their findings have not been satisfactory. Sons of God are plentiful in mythology, but in real life, the title Son of God was rarely used, except for some Roman emperors. While its use for Jesus may have been influenced by the gospel's tendency to apply him the imperial attributes, this is wholly inadequate to explain the gospel figure. For example, emperors rarely did miracles. Consequently, we must look elsewhere. In
Mhm.
this case, the Semitic-speaking paganism of first century Palestine and the semi-pagan Palestinian cult of Yahweh, from which Christianity sprang. In Hebrew and Aramaic, son of is commonly used to mean member of the class of. Hence, the sons of God is a regular way of saying the gods, just as the sons of men commonly translates to the children of men, is a regular way of just saying men. Thus, in Genesis 6.2, the sons of God saw the daughters of men, means the gods saw women. A few other examples are scattered throughout the Old Testament, isolated survivors of monotheistic censorship. They indicate the popular basis of the usage and justify us in supposing that when a Palestinian demoniac said Jesus, son of God, he meant Jesus, God. The evangelists took such expression of Semitic paganism as portents and adjusted them to their own monotheistic beliefs. This is why Jesus moves through the Gospels as a deity, doing miracles by his own divine power, but in the Synoptics is never explicitly called a God. It also explains why the title Son of God appears before and independently of the legends of divine paternity. The legends were apologetic, but the title preceded the apology and determined the line it was to take. He's a son of God because he went to Egypt and got the tattoos, because he's a magi. That's why he's a son of God. He's literally someone possessed by God. He's done the magical rites.
Mhm.
He's enthused with the spirit of his muse, right?
It's like an oracle
Exactly. And he is possessing people with demons, right? He's a magician. He's literally a magician,
and a magician. Okay.
right? So now we're going to compare and contrast Jesus with the most famous Greek magician. Um, so we got this comes from chapter 6, and this is all about Apollonius of Tyana. Okay, so Apollonius of Tyana was born to a well-to-do Greek family in the south central Anatolian town, which his name preserves the memory. Both boys, Paul and Apollonius, came down with incurable religiosity. Paul first became a Pharisee and then converted to Christianity. Apollonius became a Pythagorean and after some years set out for Babylon, where he studied with the Magi, and then for India to find the Brahmins and learn their teachings. He came back claiming to have done so, formed a circle of disciples, and lived with them as an itinerant philosopher, holy man and miracle worker, going from temple to temple along the coasts of northern Syria, Anatolia, and Greece, where Paul shortly before had gone from synagogue to synagogue. So we see the parallels between these two characters, right?
Mhm.
The historical
Yeah.
similarities between Apollonius and Jesus are clear. Both were itinerant miracle workers and preachers, rejected at first by their townspeople and brothers, though the latter eventually became more favorable. An inner circle of devoted disciples accompanied each. Both were credited with prophecies, exorcisms, cures, and an occasional raising of the dead. As preachers, both made several more demands on their hearers. Both affected epigrammatic utterances in oracular style. They taught as if with authority and came into conflict with the established clergy of the temples they visited and tried to reform. Both were charged with sedition and magic, but tried primarily for sedition. Right? So there's just so many parallels between these characters. Given these basic historic similarities, it is not surprising that similar opinions and legends grew up about the two of them. Both were said to have been fathered by gods and to have been amazingly precocious youths. Both at early stages in their careers went off into the wilderness and there encountered and worsted demons. The similarities between the reputed miracles have already been mentioned. At the ends of their lives, Apollonius escaped miraculously from his trial. Jesus executed, rose miraculously from the dead. Both then lived for some time with their disciples, were said finally to have ascended to heaven, and were credited with subsequent appearances even to unbelievers. Most important for our present purposes are the facts that both were believed by their followers to be sons of God, beings of supernatural power, and both were accused by their enemies of being magicians, right? Okay, so the life of Apollonius was written by Flavius Philostratus at the behest of Empress Julia Domna in the early century of the third century. Philostratus tells us he got his information from earlier works about him, which he mentions three. Okay. Then it says, the life of the gospel is in part an apologetic work, written not only to glorify its hero, but also to defend him against the charge of practicing magic. So both of these characters have these stories written about to transform them into saviors, to defend them from being considered frauds and magicians, okay? Philostratus indicates some of the reasons for which Apollonius was thought a magician. First, because he had lived with the Magi in Babylonia, the Brahmins in India, and the naked sages in Egypt. Second, because he foresaw and foretold many things. This gave him the reputation of being wise in supernatural things. The other miracles with which he was credited, particularly his ability to recognize and exorcise demons, must have been major causes for the belief in his magic powers. So we see the clear parallels. Jesus is also studying in Babylon and in Egypt, right? Jesus is also casting out demons, right?
Yeah. And when you say casting out demons, I guess what it means in this context, it will be like he's a healer kind of
Yes.
thing.
Healing sickness, healing madness, various forms, right? Okay. Some further characteristics of magicians are indicated by the things Philostratus, in trying to clear his hero of the charge of magic, insists that Apollonius did not do, thereby telling us that magicians were thought to do them. He would not sacrifice living creatures, nor even be present when they were sacrificed. When he called up the soul of Achilles from the dead, it was not by the Homeric sacrifices standard in necromancy, but by pure prayer. He commanded demons as he would evil men, solely by spiritual authority. Unlike magicians, he was not out for money or fame. When he stopped the plague in Ephesus, he gave the credit to Heracles, the averter. Unlike magicians, he did his miracles without sacrifice, prayers, or spells, by the power of his own divine nature. Just like Jesus, right? That was the claim that Jesus isn't a magician. Jesus isn't a magician because he's God, and he's doing this by his nature, not by any rights.
I'm sorry, Snappy. What this parallel you're doing? This is the book that you just show us. This is part of your present. Okay, it's a book.
This is
This
from the
is
same
what
book.
he's doing. This is what he's doing.
This
Like
is
this parallel.
continuing
Okay.
with Morton Smith. This is continuing with
Perfect,
Morton.
perfect.
This is his main example in the book. He has many others, but this is the most prominent one of a magician. So I thought it was important to really highlight this, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So he says, a third work was a record kept by Damas of Nineveh, Apollonius' most faithful disciple, who became his follower when he set out to visit the Brahmins and stayed with him almost until his death. He was Apollonius' Boswell. We may suspect Damas's relative had concocted the memoirs. Apollonius undoubtedly had disciples whose stories about him survived in Pythagorean circles. Pseudo-Damas may also have used some documents. Indeed, it would be surprising if he had not. So we see that he also has apostles who are potentially making up his stories. Okay, right? The parallels are just wild.
Yeah.
Apollonius' resurrection of a dead girl comes so close to Luke's story of the youth of Nain that it deserves to be quoted. A girl seemed to have died just before marriage. Apollonius merely touched her and said over her something not clearly heard and awoke the girl from seeing death. She uttered a cry and went back to her father's house. Okay. So, in the later half of the century, the philosopher Porphyry seems to have been the first to compare Apollonius and Jesus, presumably to Jesus's disadvantage. Apollonius, like Jesus, did miracles, but when arrested, he neither stood dumb nor submitted himself to indignities, but lectured the emperor as a philosopher should, and then vanished. Okay? So he says, we like him better because he got away, right?
Yeah.
About 304, a high imperial official, Sosanius Hierocles, wrote an attack on Christianity in which he included a comparison between Apollonius and Jesus as the basis for the argument that the pagans, who in spite of Apollonius's miracles, revered him merely as a man pleasing to the gods, were more sensible than the Christians, who because of Jesus's miracles thought him a god. Okay. But yeah, I think that's enough on Apollonius. We just have this stuff about him being a divine man, and comparing him to the Christians. But you see what I was trying to show you there is that
Yeah, of course.
even
Yeah,
though
that is like we're
right,
using the same story
exactly,
after.
and the argument too is from both of these characters is that they're reacting to a character type. Okay, they're trying to reject a character type. So there are magicians running around that are doing all this stuff, that are doing the things that Jesus is being claimed to do these things because these things are happening. There's a tradition of this, of these men claiming to be God and having sex cults and doing these wild rites. So that's when Jesus shows up looking like this, everyone goes, dude, are you this? you know?
Yeah.
Right? And it
I
was
mean, the
also
hypocrisy in
happening
the
to
time
this other
frame,
guy.
but
Go ahead, sir.
probably it was happening like everywhere. Like I've heard
Happening
about,
everywhere.
like, yeah.
People are always the same, man. And there've always been cult leaders, and there always will be cult leaders. They'll take advantage of people, right? And so that kind of stuff is just bound to happen. But it's important that we recognize that the Romans and the Greek people of this time understood that it was happening in their world, and were aware, and they thought that Jesus was doing this to the point
Yeah.
where we're now going to get into Emperor Julian the Apostate. So as we saw, Emperor Julian is born around 331, 332 AD, and he rules as emperor in Rome until, the late 60s, 360 something. And Emperor Julian is most famous for writing a bunch of polemics, right? He was a convert to paganism. He joins the cult of Cybele and he's initiated at Pergamum. He joins the cult of Helios and is initiated. And he talks about both Mithras as Sol Invictus, and he talks about the great goddess Cybele. He writes really two truly profound magical texts, the hymn to the king Helios and the hymn to the mother of the gods. But he also writes several polemics and stuff. So we're going to look at a bunch of his writings and see what...
He was initiated also in Eleusis, isn't it?
Yes, he was initiated in Eleusis as well.
You cannot be more initiated than him.
No. So he's got three major solar cults under his belt. The oldest one, Demeter. He got a new one in Mithras, and he's got Cybele as well. Right? Okay. So this is how he opens up the hymn to the Mother of Gods, and this is just one of my favorite quotes. Ought I say something on this subject also? And shall I write about things not to be spoken of, and divulge what ought not to be divulged? Shall I utter the unutterable? This is Julian racking his brain. Originally, this begins as a letter, and it's a letter of desperation from a man who sees his world dying, from a man who believes that the Christians are going to steal everything, and he is terrified. And so he decides to preserve the rights through the same means as the Christians, right? And this is something that the mother cult didn't do. Remember, the Christians were the ones who would write in occulted language. Now Julian is going to do the same. He's going to reveal the rights of Attis through occulted language and through Neoplatonic philosophy. So I wanted to get into some of this stuff about the sun, right? This idea of the sun as the sun, right? Attis, Dionysus, Helios, Apollo, right? And this is where we get into some of the, in the Neoplatonism of Emperor Julian, the sun is considered the perfected middle path, right? And so they have the magic to carry us out of this ideal, right? Whereas Zeus represents the highest perfected God, the absolute sun. Helios is the middle path. It's that Luciferian, Tacita energy that can break us free of this reality and carry us into ionic life. It is that solar light, right? We see this, I told you, in the hymn to the Mother of Gods. The
Mm-hmm.
sun appears as the lion, as the beast who calls Attis into madness, and then Attis castrates himself. And then he rides upon the back of the beast. And that's where we get that Lady Babylon image in the tarot from, right? This is something that's so funny, is that the Lady Babylon is a trans person in that image, because
Yeah.
she's riding the back of the beast and she's rising up to the stars, right? And that's what we see clearly in the hymn to the Mother of Gods, but this King Helios, right? Helios is the sun, the dying and rising God, the savior that can carry you to the divine. So Julian tells us here, right? He says, from my childhood, an extraordinary longing for the rays of the God penetrated deep in my soul, right? King Helios proceeds from God who is one from the intelligible universe, which is one. So that oneness, though, in the ideas of this mother, of Julian, is the mother. The mother is the absolute one in the divine that Attis is returning to. And the
Yeah.
sun is the middle force that calls
Yeah.
Attis back. And Attis is the child, the human that needs to return back. And this is that magical trinity, that cosmology, right?
And thinking about the time frame, he was like completely. This was Hellenistic, the ideas that he had. This time is 300 something
Yeah,
AD, isn't it?
360s.
Which it was like popular to keep with this Hellenistic idea. It was already like very not much that you can do that at that point when he was.
So,
It's like writing all this stuff.
well,
Like
what he's
you
seeing,
know
what
what I
he's
mean?
seeing is that he's seeing a transition. So what he's upset about is that the Christians are usurping. So what he's seeing is an
Uh-huh.
amalgamation, right? Why he wants to reveal the rights is because the Christians are taking them and claiming them as their own,
Making
right?
a mix of
Exactly,
different
right?
stuff
Now
and
Mother Mary becomes Cybele, right? You know, that image
uh,
of Magna Mater is really Demeter with Plutus, the child to come, right? When
mhm,
we're talking about the sun, we're talking about the rebirth of the child always. And it usually will appears as a baby, and that baby in the Eleusinian mysteries is called Plutus. So the
mhm,
earliest version of that Mother Mary image is Demeter with the child to come,
mhm.
the wealth of the earth, the
Yeah.
promise of resurrection. And they
But
steal that image and they make it Mother Mary, right?
okay. So, but the
That's what
point that
Julian's freaking out about.
the point that trying to go is like he was talking about this stuff, isn't it? Like, but
Yes
it
and no.
was
So
he
he's talking
couldn't.
about, so
What
this
is it?
stuff is deeply, deeply occulted, and he is the
Yeah, that's where
first
I was
to
going. Okay.
reveal it.
So
So,
it's
but
not like
he's
a lot of people is doing and
no,
understanding all of this. It was
no.
because Julian had some kind of education that was not like the mainstream one, let's say.
It's complicated because there are levels to this, right? The solar cults are the main cults in the Mediterranean at this time, right? These
Okay.
religions are thriving. Mithraism, the cult of the Great Mother, Isis.
At the time
Um,
of Julian.
at the time of Julian, right?
Mhm.
They're competing with Christianity, but you're seeing these various solar cults that still survive, right? And
Okay.
Julian, though, what he's seeing is that they're getting displaced and usurped by Christianity. Christianity is taking all of their ideas,
Mhm.
and it's Anything they don't like, they're vilifying and they're stealing what they like. So he's reacting to this theft. He's reacting to this blasphemy. And he believes he has to reveal this. But his revealing is to an educated Roman elite. Like these letters.
And at this point, he's not an emperor.
He is an emperor.
At this point,
he is an emperor. So he's actually writing this while he's he's traveling from Constantinople. He's going to war. Both of these hymns he's writing.
Amazing.
Well
so
traveled.
An emperor. He's like giving us okay. That's amazing.
Yeah.
This is just,
right. You know, so he's trying to fight against this the Christian uprising that's seeking to usurp and transform history. What I talked about with Nietzsche, right? What Julian is seeing is that the Christians are literally rejecting reality and are changing history and taking everything that's good for themselves. And he's saying, no, we can't do this. This is absolutely evil. So I have to reinterpret and re-release this myth as a counter, you know? And so that was, if I wonder if had he survived, if this could have taken on a greater place, you know, if it's hard to say, you know, but look, I wanted to show you this. So this is the Lady Babylon image from the Thoth Tarot.
Okay, sorry, I'm gonna just to see it big here.
Okay, so what do we see in the Lady Babylon image here? We see Attis transformed into the Virgo, riding on the back of the beast and drawing down the moon, calling the apocalypse. Okay, that's what this image is. So that is this woman is in the midst of a transformation into becoming the one, uniting that solar with the feminine, and that's what she represents. That's Attis on the path of divine imitation, rising into the highest intellect, achieving ionic life. Right?
I'm sorry. Bring it back. Sorry.
No worries.
You know, this pad in the freaking... there it is. Sorry.
Right. Okay. So we were talking about, you know, Julian and King Helios. So the God is one, right? There's that absolute one that we're trying to return. It's this idea of the one and the many. So within the Neoplatonic idea, you don't get an absolute monism. You get what we call a qualified non-dualism. So there is that absolute one of the mother, but in order to, you know, we also have all of this, and this is real. So both are, you know, and it's not like there's only one God in charge of everything, and there's that dualistic idea that you get in Christianity, right?
Can I just add a parenthesis there? Because the other day I was having a discussion and I couldn't give an answer, to be honest. When we're talking about Neoplatonism, I know that it has nothing to do with what we're talking, what you are exposing here now, but could you give us in a nutshell, like, what is Neoplatonism? Like,
oh man, okay. Well, Neoplatonism,
but like,
of course,
just like a Wikipedia one.
yeah, you know.
You know what I mean? Like, what is Neoplatonism?
Neoplatonism is building on the ideas of Plato and of Socrates and taking them to this high idealism. What we get within Platonism is a form of idealism, and it's a you know, their practice is theurgy. So what this is it's the philosophical magic behind the gods. It's how we explain the changing of the cycles and the descent into matter and the return to the divine. So Neoplatonism is really popularized by the philosopher Plotinus and people who are either commenting on him or students of him, such as Iamblichus.
Platon.
Yeah.
But you are talking about it's Platon. It's the same person.
Plotinus. No, Platon is a much later figure.
Way after, yeah. It's like
way later. Yeah, he's in the Byzantine era.
And it's like at the end of the Byzantine Empire. Yeah. Sorry.
Exactly. Right. He's
but
a
he
Renaissance figure.
Supposedly he was a Neoplatonism teacher.
He's building off of this stuff. Julian is also, right? So you'll see him when you read Platon. Who's the ultimate god in Platon? It's the sun, because the sun is the middle path, just as you see with most of the Neoplatonists, right? Okay. But that Neoplatonism is really, it's the It's the magic behind the divine. It explains the theurgy and explains the descent into matter. It's high idealism, right? It's
Okay.
really, really complicated.
Yeah.
Evan
I'm
does
sorry.
a really good deep
Just
dive into it.
that's what when they asked me, I just said, dude, you know, I couldn't, I will not give you an answer because I have no idea what it is. You know,
Right.
so, but
Right.
it's okay. This is for another podcast, man.
Yeah.
But thank you for the.
So, okay, we're going to get into some more Julian quotes. So now he's talking about Attis. He says, and Attis, right, is the son, as in the child, right? So you have the primordial middle son, the beast, and then you have the child, the everyman, Dionysus Attis. That's us descending into matter and having to come back to the one, right? We are all Attis. We are all Dionysus, okay? So forever Attis yearns passionately towards generation, and forever he cuts short his unlimited course through the cause whose limits are fixed, even the cause of the forms. So ultimately, this is what, when we were talking about the rejection of the Saturnian, this would be the rejection of the Saturnian. Instead of going into further generation, I stop my course and I rise to the ideal, right? But it's not the stopping of time that the Saturnians are doing. They're embracing the changing of time. They're transitioning. They're leaving this world behind. They're going through a death. Attis's castration is a death in the earlier myths. And I brought up, of course, the story of the great goddess Estrella, who sets herself ablaze to rise to the stars. Or we see this, of course, even with the great hero Heracles, who has to set himself ablaze before he can die and achieve apotheosis. Because the true god kings, they have to give up their power and their greed. You have to reject that greed. This is how you overcome that Saturnian force, right? You want to reject the black sun and come into the light sun, right?
You want to go back to like nothingness.
Well, it's not into nothingness. It's into
Nothingness, let's say everything.
Yeah.
Like you, like.
But I mean, it gets
You know
like
what I mean?
it gets debatable because the Neoplatonists talk about this idea of the monad, but within the mystery cults, not so much. You have that idea of the ionic life, which is
okay.
It's waking
But
up into timelessness. It's waking up into something entirely new. So is this is not some kind of no thing. This is not, it isn't the
okay,
extinguishing
I
of
know.
Buddhism.
I get what you mean.
Okay.
I get what you mean.
You know,
Okay,
like
yeah,
in
yeah.
the Indian philosophies, you have this idea that you
It
extinguish
says
the light,
appearing.
you know, or like you achieve some kind of unity with the all. That's not necessarily
Okay,
what's going
not
on here. You
necessarily
do
nothing.
achieve
I know what you mean.
a unity with that all, but in order to wake up and leave this realm, right? In
But it
order
seems
to
like the
claim the
idea,
new realm.
the idea is like you are going from a spot and you are getting into the top, and then you are going back to the first
There's
with
this
no problem.
idea,
But
there's this
obviously,
idea, like
even like
we exist in a
the
realm, this realm is a realm of time.
Mhm.
Time exists in order to facilitate refinement and change. We exist in this realm so that we can come into true humanity, so that we can learn right from wrong. Because the idea is if we were to exist outside of time, in timelessness, imagine if there were dicks and a place where there was no change, then it would only be shit. You cannot have assholes in
Yeah, I
timelessness.
know what you
So
mean.
this is the whole thing. You have to go through the cycles to learn how to be a
Yeah,
nice, beautiful person.
I guess it's not a yeah, exactly. I guess it's not a circle. It will be more like a spiral. Like
It's
you
the
go
Visca Pisces.
once
You ever
you go
seen that
back,
image
you're
of the
not in the
Visca
same spot.
Pisces? Have you ever seen that image of the Visca Pisces? The Visca Pisces is
In
the
English, I don't
infinity
know.
sign with an exunt. You break the chain of infinity and you leave it. And that Lady Babylon energy in the tarot is representative of that. She is
That's
the
what I was
eight,
going to say to
but she
you.
breaks
That's
the
what I
eight.
was.
She's the breaker of chains. She breaks the cycle. She
Yeah,
exits life.
and that will be like 22 card or something like that, and then you will go back to zero, isn't it? So that's
Yes.
what I was saying before. But obviously, it's not nothingness because you already went through the whole thing that you had
But you
to
got to understand, though,
manage.
you enter into this
It will
divine
not be the
moment of pure
same.
thought. right? Where you're the universe. That's
Okay.
timelessness. So even if you descend
Hmm.
back into time,
Hmm.
timelessness is infinite, right? It's a moment and it's
Amazing.
infinite. So even if the cycles continue, they don't. This is where we get
Yeah,
into the absurdity,
exactly.
right?
There is no
And
cycles.
it's a realization of the mind.
Hmm.
Enlightenment is an unveiling. You enter timelessness when you wake up and realize there is no time.
Hmm.
And then you can
Yeah,
exist within
incredible.
that chaos fractal and you can choose where you go. This is where they talk about, you get this in a lot of the magical texts, right? You want to go forward and backwards in time. You want to play. Ammon talks about this all the time. They're always going into time because once you can break time, now you can ride your chariot. You know, in the Greek text they call it the chariot. In the Jewish text they call it the Merkabah. But the Magi would
Hmm.
create these magical vehicles, and they would travel through time.
Move, move through time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's what you do. It's like you see this in modern magic. It's this idea of creating the astral temple or the astral self. And this is something that you can go to in your dreams or when you die. And once you can go to that image, now you can be free of the bonds of time and reality. You know, in the voodoo traditions, they talk about becoming a literal spider with 8 legs for the 8 cardinal directions so that you can move through reality, right?
Hmm. To
We're
experience
getting into
again
really
time.
wild magic, you know?
But that's the crazy thing. To experience again what? Time.
Yeah, right. But
That
this is the
is
thing. You
the
come
whole-
into timelessness to do what? To Here's the
Yeah.
thing. The
I mean, if
universe
you.
exists for play. The universe exists for play. The one
Mhm,
becomes many to know itself. And the cycle will never stop.
mhm,
Timelessness or time is a choice.
mhm.
But the cycles never stop.
Yeah.
Life is never
But
ends.
another small parenthesis, bro, because I cannot let it go. Like the last time we were talking about, you think that was the whole breaking of this matrix that Gurdjieff was talking about? Was
Absolutely.
time? Absolutely, isn't it?
Absolutely. You
I'm
got to
absolutely
slay
sure also.
Saturn.
Yeah.
You got Look what we're doing. You got to overthrow the tyrant. You got to reject greed. You've got to
Mhm.
limit your
Yeah.
generation and
Or even
cast.
your personality to put it in. Even you.
You got to commit. You got to commit in that lover's path to the muse, right? You've got to
Mhm.
commit. You got to be on that magical path of refinement. You got to become the
Yeah.
Virgo. You got to become Psyche. What does Psyche do? She passes through the gates of the underworld. She goes through that process of refinement until she can rise to the heights of the ideal and
Mhm.
be in the crystal palace with Eros.
Mhm. And probably also that's why they were using this octave idea of music and
Absolutely.
sound because it will give you an understanding of a circle repetition, an endless repetition.
Everything
So
happens in circles in music. And what is music about? It's decorating time. And look, there are two aspects to the musical tradition when we're talking about the magic. You have the heartbeat of the mother, which is the donkey, the drum, right? And then you have the guitar. What does the guitar do? What does the stringed instruments do? The 4 and the 7 strings. They make melody within rhythm. And
mhm,
this is the secret. What does the magus do? He tells his story. He creates reality through imagination. It's the
yeah,
same thing as playing a song. You
mhm,
play within the bonds of time and you define time through your
yeah,
creation of melody. To
yeah,
make
and
a
then you can
song is
create
to create
universes.
reality. Exactly.
You can go with
Exactly.
when you are doing harmony.
Yes.
You're
Yes.
create you're creating a new universe. Like it will
And you're
not happen in the
harmonizing with
same way.
another realm. You can literally see through time.
But
Apollo
if
is the
but
one
if
who
you go
moves through
into the
time, right?
music, if you go into the music, you will understand it like very easily. Like we have rhythm, we have melody,
Yep.
we have harmony.
Yep.
You can study it, three of them in separate ways, but when the phenomenon happens, like when you are actually creating a harmony between melody and chords and rhythms, dude, you have an universe, and
Yep.
it can change as you want. So
Exactly. You can
that's why they were using that
improvise, right?
music. That's yeah, makes so much sense, man. To to
It's
to to,
so,
to
and
put music
when we
in
get
your
into a lot of
education.
these, when we get into a lot of these magical traditions, like you see this explicitly, you see this explicitly. the logos, the word, is the song of the birds. It is the Vok. It is the ops. It is both sight and sound in the same thing. When they're talking about, do you have the ears to hear and the eyes to see? They mean the same thing. Can you see the universe? Can you perceive the universe? Right? Can you witness the majesty of nature and recognize the song and harmonize with it? The magician is the one who can harmonize and make a melody within the rhythm of the universe. Right? So
That's
it gets
amazing.
so wild, right? Okay, so let's go ahead.
I will have your phrase. That's a phrase, bro.
Love it, love it.
I'll make poster out of it.
So when King Attis stays his limitless course by his castration, the god bids us also root out the unlimited in ourselves to imitate the gods of our leaders and hasten back to the defined and uniform, and if it be possible, to the one itself. How else do we do this? We see this within many of the great mystics. King Numa does what? How does King Numa achieve an end to his limitless course? After his wife dies, he retreats into the woods, he takes the vow of silence, and he sits by the river and listens. And while he listens to the babbling of the brook, the muse Egeria reveals herself. And then he marries her and commits to that path of Attis and transformation. You know, there's so many ways, like people get too caught up with this castration idea. And there are there are trans people for which this is a legitimate magical path, but that's like 1% of people. And so many people look at this and they become appalled. And really, you need to understand this. What does it mean to limit your course and to reject greed? What does it mean to refine yourself? You know, and this is what needs to happen when we're talking about the alchemical traditions, right? You got to balance the masculine and the feminine. And the masculine energy, the beast energy, is that energy that dominates. It's that energy that takes, right? And so the lesson for the masculine, those who are absolutely in that energy, if we're going to take it to its ideal, this almost never happens in an individual, right? So that's the other problem with myth, is you're dealing with absolutes and parallels that won't explicitly happen for you. We both have to do the masculine and the feminine side. But the masculine side needs to reject greed and needs to reject possession, the dominating of the other. And it does that through that magic of castration and becoming feminine. We see the parallel with Medea, the Kori. What does Medea do? She is also the daughter of the sun, right? She also goes through the cycles, but she has to do the feminine path. And what does the feminine do? In the classical myths, the feminine seeks salvation through submission. The feminine regulates herself to a masculine in order to be saved and protected. That energy must be rejected. Exactly. There is no savior, right? So the feminine has to save herself. The story of Medea is that she overcomes Jason and breaks the curse. She goes through the cycles and rises to becoming a king. She creates her own city. She rises to the stars through her own self-immolation. Right?
She goes into the masculine side
exactly.
of
She goes into the masculine. She rides the beast, just as Attis has to go into the feminine, right? He fell into the cave. He fell into the mud. He's abusing the nymphs. Not good. You got to reject that filth. You can't abuse the nymphs. You got to imitate the mother, Attis. Medea, you felt pity for the bloody pirate. You thought lust was love. You submitted yourself to an other and committed atrocities in his name. Now you have to reject him. You have to break free of that curse and become your own power. Define your life for yourself and take control of your own reality. Right?
And make some violence.
And make some violence. But ultimately, we all need to do both.
I understand what you
we
mean.
all need to do both. Everyone needs to be the emperor and the empress. Everyone needs to reconcile that other extreme in order to come to that middle path of Helios that takes us to the divine, right? So, wild stuff, right? Let's read the last one
Amazing
here.
stuff, bro.
For what could be more blessed, what more joyful than a soul which has escaped from limitlessness and generation and inward storm and has been translated up to the very gods? And Attis himself was one, right? He rejected the chaos of transformation and came into purity, right? Okay. Here we get into some nice stuff here. So Julian just tells you, Cybele is described as motherless virgin. And this is an epithet that's used for Athena. And Athena is directly connected to the Median cult. She comes from Lake Tritonis. She comes from Libya. And she goes to Athens, just as Medea does, right? So look at this. Cybele is the Virgin Mother, right? And Julian is calling it out. They're stealing her image, as I was talking about.
This is Julian, is it? Yeah. I'm sorry. Can
Julian.
you show me the last time that? Yeah, this is Julian. Citing Julian.
Yeah.
In
his oration number 5. So that's the text that was compiling it, and then Julian, his oration 5 is where it is in his writings. Now we're going to be looking at the text you were talking about, the Galatians text. So we're going to get into his criticisms of Christianity. So let's see here. It says, if it is God's will that none other should be worshipped, why do you worship this spurious bastard, son of his whom he has never yet recognized or considered as his own? Right? God doesn't save Jesus in Julian's perspective. He suffers and dies, right? Why should we love a man who isn't loved by his own Father God? Right? Next criticism, a mere mortal and a dead mortal at that, the corpse of a Jew, who only 300 years before had accomplished nothing of note other than freak instances of healing and exorcism in some uptown country villages of Palestine. So he's just a mage from Palestine. Why do we give a care about this dude? Right?
Yeah, probably there was a lot of them.
Right?
So I mean, like it was something like you were saying before. It was something that it was like commonly
happening. There were many of these figures. Jesus was one of many, and they were all over the empire, right? And there were many of these solar cults. The Mosaic law enjoined worship of one supreme God alone and does not assume any gods as second, either like or unlike him. Despite the Mosaic insistence on the Lord, our God is one Lord, here were the Christians claiming at least 2, if not 3 gods. So he looks at the Trinity and sees his own Trinity and says, you guys got 3 gods just like I do. You're not a monotheism. Maybe you could claim monism, but you reject monism. You reject that non-dual. They reject the Platonic philosophy. So he's like, I don't even know what you guys are talking about. Your philosophy doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah, it seems like it was like a mix of stuff. It was not like the component of philosophy on it. It was more like it was more like, okay, this is what we believe now.
It comes out of the magical
this is what we
tradition, you know. It comes out of the magical tradition, and then people.
Which is not related with philosophy. That's what you mean? Like it's not related.
It doesn't originate, right? It doesn't originate in philosophy.
From reason, let's say. Okay.
Yeah, it becomes philosophized, but this is now the thinker proving what the prove, you know, like it's that you're proving yourself now. You come to that conclusion that Jesus is God, and you manifest and develop a philosophy that ensures that, right? It's the same criticism that Nietzsche is making. So it's not real philosophy, according to
exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like
it's based upon a belief, and you rewrite all of history in order to empower said belief. Yeah. I mean, they do this with Josephus, right? Clearly, they do this with all.
If you are talking about philosophy, can you put belief on it?
No. Right, then it wouldn't be true philosophy. It has to. I mean, you can believe. I mean, you get into weird stuff when you get into idealism, but even within idealism, the true idealists believe that you can prove it through reason. You know, and that even if they come into belief, it's a reasoned belief. Right? And always belief is subservient to reason in philosophy. Belief is a tool of the reasoned mind, right? Otherwise, you're binding yourself to a falsehood. Yeah. And that's what Plato is getting at, you know? Like, it's okay to believe in something if it can empower you, right? But you got to recognize it as something created within the mind, you know, that's something that is a tool.
No, right? That's amazing. That's amazing because, you cannot skip it.
No. Belief is there. Faith is there. These things are real. Now, Why not be a magus and utilize it to your own advantage, right?
Yeah.
Choose what you believe in and reject what you don't, and be self-aware. Once you fall into this, I think, and therefore I seek out to prove it, you've damned yourself, right? That's not science. Now you're just going to prove your own perspective, right? That's not reasoned. So you got to see these trappings in yourself, which is extraordinarily difficult to do. It's easy to point it out in another, right?
Yeah, of course. That's the whole work on oneself. It's all about.
Exactly. Right. So let's continue here. It says, it was merely John exploiting the early success of Christianity in many of the towns of Greece and Italy, as well as a response to his hearing of the veneration which had already come to surround the tombs of Peter and Paul. So he's claiming that John is exploiting the popular uprising, right? He's exploiting the situation, right? He's doing everything he can to manipulate people, right? All of this is exploitation in the eyes of Julian, right? And propaganda. Okay. These rituals and ceremonies, which were thought capable of uniting a human soul with the divine and of bringing men into the divine presence by animating the statues of gods, were known as theurgy. Okay. So there's that theurgy magic that's behind Neoplatonism, the making of something divine and the coming into the divine, right? So Abraham had been a Chaldean, an ancestor of the sacred people of old, who believed to have given to the Greeks the tradition of theurgy, which lay at the heart of Julian's paganism. The Chaldeans, for the Greeks, are sort of it's a word that describes basically all the Sumerians, all the various Sumerian peoples and Babylonian peoples. So Abraham comes out of that Chaldean magic, right? And this is where they're connecting their magic to, from Babylon and the Magi. So they're saying that Abraham has that Magi root, but he's corrupt in it, right? And so Julian is going even further, where a lot of his contemporaries are stuck on Jesus. He takes it all the way to Abraham, to the root of Judaism, and says that it begins with him, the corruption, right?
I love this text we are reading now, like this quote is when he's an emperor, isn't it?
He's an emperor right before he dies. So he's on a campaign to basically try to shore up the empire because the empire is falling apart. There's all these civil wars breaking out.
He's fighting, he's going to war with Germanic.
Oh, yeah.
I think he was like going into war, and this is what he was writing about.
This is what he's writing about. This is what his mind is at. Even though he's in the midst of a war, he's concerned with all of this Christian nonsense and preserving his magical tradition, And the story goes that he's killed by a random soldier, but the Christians twist it. For much of history, they believed that a Christian stabbed him in the back and that this was like divine retribution, and they call him the apostate. They vilify him as a demon, it's quite depressing. Yeah. But he's become, of course, in modern times, rehabilitated, and people are re-examining his work,
Yeah.
And that's what he's even getting treated like a philosopher in his own right, not to the heights of like an Iamblichus, but he is doing that great Neoplatonic philosophy, and he's trying to preserve his magical tradition, But now we're going to get into the final part of my presentation, which is to show you the Mithras liturgy. Amazing. So the Mithras liturgy, right? It comes to us out of the PGM. So this is the original scroll of the PGM. And the Mithras liturgy represents the synthesis of all these various magical traditions that we're seeing in the Mediterranean at this time. So we have Mithraism, we have the great mother cult, we have, the Egyptian cults, we have Christianity, right? There's elements of, you'll see magic spells that reference Christos, right? You'll see magic spells that reference Yahweh and Yao Seboth and Adonai, right? So this text, though, is really interesting because it has all of these elements, and I believe it really shows us a magical rite in order to achieve immortality. Okay, and I think that this is what Jesus was up to. from my whole thing, I see Jesus as a magician who is trying to achieve apotheosis. I still also agree with Nietzsche that the later Christian tradition is this, this greedy narcissistic death cult that is crying over his loss. But Jesus is still a magician, So we're going to look at the text of this whole ritual and just kind of go through it. So it says, this is how the ritual opens up. It says, "Be favorable to me, providence and soul, as I write out these mysteries, which have been handed down to me and which are not to be trafficked. I pray with confidence for my only child to be granted immortality, as an initiate who shares in this power of ours, the power that the great god Helios Mithras ordered to be made known to me through his archangel, so that I might travel in person to explore the heavens and look upon all things. It is necessary for you, my daughter, to gather the juices of the herbs and spices, which I will specify to you at the end of this sacred document." So there's all of these wild magical herbs and drugs that need to be used, right? And
Yeah.
this is about ascending to the heavens, right? Ascending to the heavens and exploring the zodiac, okay? The invocation. This is the invocation. First birth of my birth, first beginning of my beginning. Breath of breath, first breath of the breath in me. Fire placed by God in the mixture of mixtures that I have in me. First fire of the fire in me. Water of water, first water of water in me. Earth, first earth of the earth in me. So the scrying of the elemental powers. This is something that's so foundational to all modern magic, right? And we see this in most magical contexts, okay?
Mhm.
Perfected body belonging to me, whose mother is, which was fashioned by an honorable arm, a deathless right hand in the cosmos, which is dark and shining, soulless and ensouled. If it seems good to you, Metereta Thoth Erazath, give me over to immortal birth and then to my underlying nature, so that beyond the present necessity which is pressing on me hard. So he wants to come into that ionic life, into that magic beyond time, right?
Yeah.
I may look upon the immortal first principle with the immortal spirit, the immortal water, the most solid air. I may be born again in mind, and the sacred spirit may breathe in me. I marvel at the holy fire. I may look upon the abyss of the awful water of the dawn, and the life-giving and the surrounding aether may hear me, right? For today, I, who was born immortal from a mortal womb, but who have been raised up by mighty power in a deathless right hand with an immortal spirit, I am going to see with immortal eyes the immortal Ion and master of the fiery crowns. I, a holy one made holy by the holy rites of holiness. The power of my human soul is receding from me for a short time. I will receive it again in accordance with the present necessity, which is pressing on me bitterly and relentlessly. I, whose mother is, according to the unchangeable decree of God, since it is not possible for me, who am born mortal, to rise with the golden flashes of the immortal light and stand in place my death-bound mortal nature and receive me again safe in the exorable and pressing necessity. So what we see here, right, is an abandoning of the earthly form and an equation with the stars. We see this explicitly within the Orphic tradition. For I am a child of earth and heaven, but my nature is of the heavens, right?
Mhm.
That's what he's saying here. Okay. For I am, all right, the son of Psychon Demu. I am Makarath, and this is a thing that Jesus gets into and the Bible gets into. And you see this throughout the PGM, all this identifying. I am Hermes. I am the son of God. I
Mhm.
am, right? And so
Yeah.
like Morton Smith makes a big deal of all these I am things. Really important to the magical tradition, right? Okay. So the ascent to the astral realm. Draw in breath from the rays of the sun, right? We're drawing in the breath from the sun, that middle God who can help us ascend, that Lucifer who will free us from the bonds. Inhaling as much as you can 3 times, you will see yourself being lifted up and ascending, so that you appear to be in mid-air. You will hear
Mhm.
nothing, neither any human being nor any other living thing, nor will you see anything of mortal life on earth at this time. Instead, you will see the whole of the immortal world. You will see the divine astrological order as it stands on this day and at this hour, the planetary gods, some rising into heaven and others setting. The course of the rising gods will be visible through the disk of the sun god, my father, as also will be what is called the flute, which is the source of the winds that gives service to us. You will see it happening from the sun's disk like a flute. You will see the current wind flowing unstoppably from this object to the regions of the west in the matter of the east wind, insofar as it is assigned to serve the east wind. And you will see the other winds flowing in the same way to their own regions. You will see the gods looking intently at you and rushing towards you. You are immediately to put your right finger to your mouth, right? In that silence, diamuta, right? Silence, 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 the symbol of the deathless living God. Guard me, silence. This is also the god Harpocrates, the disabled dwarf, the child of Isis, right? It gets into some really wild imagery here.
No, and also it sounds like indications, like
Yeah,
like, dude, this will happen. This is what you have to do.
absolutely. You're here to wrestle with the winds. You gotta you gotta master the elements, and now you gotta master the winds, right? And then you
Mhm.
come into the silence. Okay.
Yeah, not give an answer, not give a question, not say anything at that point.
No, no, right? And we see this even in the later magical traditions, right? Silence is one of the four magic words that Alpheus Levi tells us, and it's the magic of rain. It's the magic that calls you into kingship. It is the power of Lady Babylon. Okay? Then you will see the gods looking at you benignly and no longer rushing towards you, but rather proceeding with their own functions in an orderly way. When you see that the world above is clear and in motion, and that none of the gods or angels is rushing towards you, except to hear a roar of great thunder that will shock you, you are to say again, silence, silence, I am a star, wandering about with you, shining forth out of the depths. I am a star, right? When you have said the foregoing words, the disk of the sun will immediately expand. After you have spoken the second prayer, silence, silence, and what follows, hiss twice and make a popping sound twice. You will immediately see numerous five-pointed stars coming forth from the disk of the sun and filling the whole air. You are to say again, silence, silence. The disk will open and you will see the boundless circle and the fiery gates, which will be shut. Immediately make the following prayer with your eyes closed. Listen to
Amazing.
me. Sorry.
Go, please, please.
All right. Listen
Sorry.
to me, whose mother is, Lord, you who have bound together with your spirit the fiery bars of the four roots, you who are burning fire, Pentatiruni, creator of light, fire breather, you who have a soul of fire, you who have breath of light, you who delight in fire, beautiful shining one, Ion, master of light, you who have a body of fire, light giving one, fire sowing one, Lord of fiery tuberance, might of light, whirling fiery one, light moving one, you who make the din of the thunderbolt, glorious light, increaser of light, you who sustain light by fire, tamer of stars. We're getting into wild magic here, right? We're getting now into that idea of the Vesta, Hestia, the light in the darkness, into Hecate, that energy that calls the light out of chaos.
Mhm.
Okay. And the
And
ion.
also, what I'm seeing from my perspective as a person that doesn't understand much about this more than I can just make an assumption or whatever. What I see in the Mithraic liturgy is like these are indications for something that will happen, and probably, I mean, whoever wrote it is, or in a bunch of time, this was happening constantly at the point that you can actually say, okay, this is what's going to happen when you are over there. This is what you have to do,
Yeah.
which is absolutely mind blowing, man. I mean, oh, that's what I'm
Right.
getting.
And
I'm not sure.
oh, yeah. And there's clearly some kind of kind of drug trip going on. They're talking about when you hear the
Absolutely
pops,
sure.
and you're
Absolutely
expanding your
sure.
mind. You got to make these click sound. Like, man, there's some weird stuff going on, you know?
Yeah, but it's like a protocol,
Yes,
you know.
absolutely.
Mhm.
So let's see here. It says, "Open to me, for because of the pressing, bitter, and exorable necessity, I am invoking the immortal, living, and honored names which have never yet passed into the mortal realm, nor are they spoken into speech by human tongue, or mortal voice, or mortal sound." So we're getting into the babble now, the babble of the brook, the babble of the birds, right? You know, where we're speaking in tongue. Say all these things with fire and spirit as you complete the invocation for the first time. Then begin it again, likewise a second time, and continue till you have completed it for 7 immortal gods of the cosmos, right? For the 7
For
spheres, for the
7
7
immortal
planets,
gods of the cosmos.
right? The 7 classical planets of the Greek pantheon, right?
Mhm. Okay.
And of course, the 7 strings of the magical lyre, okay? Now Helios shows up.
Yes,
When you have
yes.
said these things, you will hear thunder and tumult in the surrounding area. You will likewise feel yourself being shaken. You are to say again, silence, in the second prayer. Then open your eyes and you will see the gates open in the world of the gods which is inside the gates, so that your spirit will rush upwards in pleasure and joy at the sight. Stand still, look intently, and immediately draw breath from the divine into yourself. When your soul is restored, say, "Come, Lord." When you have said this, the rays of the sun will turn toward you. Look towards the center of them. When you do this, you will see a youthful, handsome god with fiery hair, dressed in a white tunic and a red cloak, and wearing a fiery crown. Greet him immediately with the greeting of fire. Now here's the greeting of fire. Hail, Lord, great in power, great in might, King, greatest of gods, Helios, Lord of heaven and earth, God of gods. Your spirit is mighty, Lord, and your power is mighty. If it pleases you, announce me to the greatest God, to the God who begot you and made you. Announce that a human being whose mother is, who was born from the mortal womb and from seminal fluid, has been born again from you. Today, and out of so many myriads, has been made immortal at this hour in accordance with the decree of God, who is surpassing good. He thinks it's right to worship you and praise with all his human strength, that the God may appear and give an oracle at this auspicious time. Take with you your horoscope of the current day and hour, the ruler of which has the name. When you have said this, he will go towards the celestial pole, and you will see him proceeding on his way as if on a road. Look intently at him and make a long bellowing sound like a horn, expelling all your breath and straining your sides. Kiss the phylacteries and say, "Keep first to the right. Keep me safe." Okay. When you have said this, you will see the gates open and 7 virgins coming out of the depths of the divine world, dressed in linen, having the faces of asps. These beings are called the Fates of Heaven. They hold golden wands. When you see them, greet them this way. Hail to you, 7 Fates of Heaven, good and holy virgins, sacred ones, companions of many Mirophor, most hallowed guardians of the 4 pillars. And then they name the 7. A further 7 gods will also come forth. They will have the faces of black bulls, and they will be wearing linen garments around their waists and 7 golden crowns. They are the beings called the pole lords of heaven. You must greet each of them in the same way, calling them by their individual names. Hail to you, guardian of the pivot, sacred and mighty youths, you who turn at command the rotating axis of the circle of heaven, who send out thunder and lightning and earthquakes and thunderbolts to impious people. But to me, who am pious and God-fearing, you send health and soundness of body, sharpness of hearing and sight, and serenity in the favorable hours of this day today, my lords and mighty gods. Right? And then we get more 7 gods here. Now we get the appearance of Mithras himself.
Okay.
We're almost done here, sorry.
No, no, no,
this
no,
is
no, no.
this is the last
This is
passage.
what we are waiting for, brother.
Right.
Thank you very much.
When they take up their position in the appropriate order, each in their respective place, look intently into the air, and you will see bolts of lightning falling, lights shining, the earth shaking, and the supreme God, descending. He will be brilliant in appearance, youthful and golden haired, wearing a white tunic and a gold crown and trousers, and holding in his right hand the golden shoulder of a young bull. This is the bear who sets the vault of heaven in motion and turns it in a contrary direction, moving it up and down as appropriate to time. Then you will see bolts of lightning leaping from his eyes and stars leaping from his body. You are to immediately make a long bellow, straining your stomach so that you arouse your five senses. Make a long bellow until your breath is exhausted. Kiss the phylacteries again and say, "You are the life of me. Stay, dwell in my soul. Do not leave me, because so bids you." Look intently at the god making a long bellow and greet him in this way. "Hail, Lord Master of water. Hail, Chief of earth. Hail, Mighty One of air, bright shining one. Grant me an oracle, Lord, on the matter in question. Lord, I am being born again and passing away. I am growing, I have grown, and I am coming to my end. I have been born from a life-giving birth. I have been released, and I am journeying to death. This is what you have established. This is the law that you have set up in the mystery that you have made. I am." And we have a sacred name again in another "I am" phrase, right?
Mhm.
Immediately after you have said this, he will give you an oracle. You will be weak in soul, and you will not be in yourself when he answers you. He will speak the oracle to you in lines of verse, and after doing so, he will depart. But you are to stay where you are in silence, and you will take everything in by yourself. Afterwards, you will remember what was spoken by the great God in its entirety, even if the oracle consisted of thousands of lines. So that's it. That's how you ascend to the heavens and become possessed by Mithras and achieve the oracle.
So after
Become a son of God.
he has to come back and write everything in a
Yep.
thousand lines.
He gets his book,
For us
right?
to
He
get
gets his oracular book.
Mhm.
This was all about to get the
But
gospel, right?
who's
To get the
who's
law.
going who's going to this place and being educated in how to do this?
King
This
Numa.
is
This is happening all the time. This is just
but
a
I know
magical
what you mean,
occulted
but
version.
this will be like an initiation, isn't it? We know this will be
Absolutely.
an initiation. So usually initiations, um, well, it's open to everybody. It's open just for a few. It's open for, you know what I mean? Like who's being educated and going into, because what you just showed to us is like you have to understand what you're doing. I mean, like probably you are been doing some work before, as when you are actually going into the right, because this is a right, you are taking drug probably, isn't it?
Yep.
And you are going in through some different things that you have to, I mean, you're performing right, and then you have to be able to actually be a person that can behave himself in this manner. And after that, you will have to bring the information you got
Yeah.
and write it. I mean, yeah, write in a thousand lines or in a 10,000
Now,
lines.
think
This is
about this as imagine
just
this
amazing,
as
man.
the central operation of
Hmm.
the magical tradition. And so when you're looking at these magical characters who connect to their muse and then have an inspired text, then are inspired to create something, this is what they're doing. The claim is that Pythagoras has done this, right? That King
Hmm.
Numa has done this, right? That Orpheus potentially did this, right? Medea certainly did this.
Hmm.
All of these various mystics are going through this rite in
And you
order to
think that
come into
they
that
were going?
empowered energy.
Do you think they were going to the same place?
Yeah,
Yeah.
ultimately, I believe that all of these different cults are all the reason why they're all coalescing at this time into Christianity is because they all coalesce. You
Hmm.
know, it's
Hmm.
all the worship of the sun, whether you call her Hestia or Medea or Apollo or Lucifer
Yeah.
or what have you.
Yeah.
All of these people are doing the same magical solar cult. And
Hmm.
in its earliest form, it's Neith and Amun-Ra from Siwa in ancient Egypt. This is the earliest version we have evidence for, but it
Yeah.
doesn't stay there. It evolves and it expands.
Mhm.
Pythagoras goes there.
So they
Alexander
were
goes,
so I mean, obviously I'm not looking, I'm not asking you for you to tell me like if they were actually going to the same spot, but this is what we can infer. Like they were going somewhere.
Mhm.
This is 200 BC, AD, isn't it? Mithraic liturgy.
Yeah, two to this liturgy is so we have like the demotic magical papyri from which this is clearly based, and that demotic magical
Okay.
papyri is, we're
Older.
talking, as old as dirt,
Yeah.
man. This is
It's
going all
like
the way
when
back
when
to
we
the
say
coffin texts,
yeah, I
you
understand what
know
you mean. It's like we're talking about oracles, and we can talk about Trophonius and Delphi. You know, obviously it has something to do. It's completely different. This is an earlier way to do the stuff, but like obviously I'm. It's not like I'm asking you to give me the answer of that, but it's just like, what do you think? I mean,
so
they
I
will go
think
in this whole 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 of the time that if we think where it started or whatever, let's say what we know, like 1,500 years or something like that, like they were doing this kind of stuff. So you think they were going and engaging with something that they were actually bringing some information from, but all of these different um, names, protocols, ways to do it, they were engaging with the same thing.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, yeah.
absolutely. They're doing this is a refinement of a much earlier tradition. Okay, so what we see like with
Okay.
Medea represents the combination of a bunch of different magics: Greek, Persian, Egyptian. If we say she comes from Colchis, which is debated, but the Colchians were Egyptians originally that then settled along the Black Sea, and they
Mhm.
represent that synthesis of Eastern philosophy, steppe philosophy, Greek philosophy, and Egyptian philosophy,
And what
right?
about
So,
the nomadic ones?
right?
There were some
What's that?
nomadic ones at the same time, like
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
say
yeah, yeah.
what we
That's what I'm talking about. The steep peoples,
the
right?
steep, yeah, the steep
Yeah,
peoples,
yeah.
like we have a lot
They're
of them,
coming
yeah.
down there too, right? The steep peoples are constantly coming and invading Turkey and
Mhm.
Arabia, right?
Going
So
into the
at that
sea, going
point is
up.
a crossroads, right? Right there at
Okay,
Colchis
yeah,
is a
I know what you mean.
massive crossroads
Second,
of, like, we're
well,
talking
you have the
about
Black
the
Sea.
Silk Road goes right through there, right?
Mhm, mhm. It connects Asia with
With Africa
well,
and
but
Europe.
for them was not like Asia and Europe, but
Right.
obviously if you see geographically how it was, and at the same, if you
That's what
go
it
by
does,
sea,
right? It
if you
unites
go
all
by
these
sea,
cultures,
you will be able to connect the Aegean Sea with the Black Sea. There is a
right?
connection in between,
So I
and
believe that
yeah.
like Medea represents the solar cult at its apex, right? Where we're talking about all of this ideas coming in to its
Mhm,
absolute flourishing. And then it expands in its golden age until eventually that empire crushes, falls
mhm.
apart. Now we only have, the vague references of
Yeah,
that Bacchic
I know what you mean.
Pelasgian empire left, right? But it spread so far and wide that it had that massive impact where we see, even though where we see all these solar cults arise that are clearly magi, like they're clearly magi in origin, but they're not, they're so far removed now and they've created their own thing. And we also got to recognize, like, someone, you can do this, you don't need the magical right. So you might as well close this down. We've already read this, we can just talk,
Okay, sorry, bro.
no problem. But like,
I'm a newbie in this
to
kind of thing.
me,
Okay.
one of the most inspiring characters in all of literature, of the Greek Roman literature, is King Numa. And
Mhm,
King Numa does the rites, contacts his muse, and does it all by himself in nature. He finds the drugs, he sits by the river, and he experiences his muse. He does that entire Mithraic rite in his mind with himself.
mhm.
This is a reality. All of us are Attis. All of us are Dionysus. Dionysus is the everyone. We all can go in
No.
nature, sit in the silence, and connect to the muse.
This is the physicality, let's say.
But what it is that by the time you get into that Median magic, it's refined and now it can really shoot you. Like Numa is someone who's special. How many of us are going to go sit in the silence by ourselves in nature until we come into contact with that muse, right?
Yeah, sure.
Whereas
Nobody,
like
I guess.
the very
They
few
used to be,
people,
they have been doing it.
yeah,
So,
people still do it.
I mean, like, if you go to every different place in the world, they will have their own vision of how to connect with something. So, I guess that's what my question was going. Like, you think it's the same place? There were all of these, like, I mean, you have, I don't know, like 3,000 years ago, a guy was doing some stuff. Then 2,500 years, another guy was doing some stuff. They were
People
engaging
are
with something.
all more similar
So,
than we're different, and we all have the same origin. We're all
but this
coming out
this
of
other
it, you know?
side, this other side
Hmm.
is, you think is one thing they are engaging with, and they are given different ways how to do it. Different, let's say, what a yogi was doing, what
The big
a monk was trying to do, what a
there's a big
fakir was trying
difference.
to do, you
It's
know?
it's not just about monks and magicians and all. Okay, what are you
Okay.
seeking to do? Okay, if you're seeking to achieve connection with nature and come into the divine, then you can do this kind of magic where you will be like King Numa, you will experience the divine, you will be possessed by the sun, you will connect to your muse. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, though, you can do it in that Saturnian way. You can do it in that greed, self-aggrandizing way.
Mm-hmm.
You
You
know,
were
the
engaged with
magic
the
with
same
the same power,
thing.
with the same
Okay,
power. And
that's
it
what I
will
was
empower
trying
you
to go.
upon the earth, but it will
Mhm.
also do what? Destroy you and call you back into the
Oh,
cycle
sure,
again
sure,
and
sure.
again and again and again.
So
And
this
so
is
these
the
are the
invisible.
options.
This is the
Yeah.
invisible that we're going.
Yep.
Let's say in the Amazonian tribes, taking the freaking drugs they're doing, and they're talking with the jaguar or and the anaconda or whatever, you know. Then you have this other guy that is talking with the sun or whatever. The, I guess I know that I'm not trying to for you to tell me the answer of all of these questions, you know.
Mhm.
But
I
what
know.
you think is the same. This other side, the same. We are as species engaging with in a
I
different
think
way
it's
in
I think it's
different parts of the
important to
world.
understand too, like the universe is one in many. The universe is one in many.
Ah,
So,
okay.
okay. So yeah, we have that oneness of the great mother, but we also have the perfected middle path of the sun. And we also have the absolute individuality of all of us. We are all Dionysus, but you are Bruno and I'm Snappy. I have my
Hmm.
own perspective. I have my own universe within that is entirely me and entirely only for me. And no one else can experience it. And it is a reality that I get to play in. And you have
Beautiful,
your own reality, right? So
beautiful.
it is the one and the many. And so we have to see everything is interconnected and everything is absolutely unique, but also united. It's both. It's that absurdity. It's that
Hmm.
absurdity. Every one is a star, and all of us are united in that intellect at the same
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
So you can connect with all of the spirits of earth. You
Hmm.
can connect to the animals, you can connect to the waters, you can connect to the stars, or you can connect to the
Yeah,
sun. The
but
sun is special
the
because
thing
they're that
is,
middle path, right?
we have, me myself, I haven't been initiated. I haven't
Mhm.
been in the other side. You know? I've been initiated in different ways. You know, when I was a kid, my father liked the idea of the initiation, so what was she left me in a big, like, countryside that I could stay there when I was like 10. So I stayed there for like 4 days, and then my brother did the same. But it's just like to lose the fear of being alone, camping or whatever, you know, initiation, you know, kind of thing. But when we're talking about the other side, I'm keeping going into this because obviously
I think
I'm
honestly
researching
people,
researching that, not because
yeah,
I want to know. We are researching this idea of
initiation is about the
what was
gaining of a
the
new
other side, bro.
perspective, right?
What's the
So
other side?
initiation is about transition and change and about accepting a new perspective and letting go of a previous perspective. That's all an
Okay,
initiation is. So
that's
you can
amazing.
be initiated into adulthood. Everyone is,
Hmm.
right? Like even though like classically you would be naturally initiated into adulthood if you were in a tribe. But even though we've lost
Yeah,
this, we're all initiated into
yeah,
adulthood
sure.
through
It's
life,
like it's like
right?
when we were talking about the traveling before at the beginning. But why will they create a whole society around it when you have a protocol to do it? It's probably because you are actually not, it's not that ambiguous. I mean, you are going into some specific spot, bro. I mean, you are going at season.
But
That's what I'm getting from the idea
we
of the
also get this
initiations,
idea of
that of the
saviors,
mysteries,
right?
let's say.
We also
Not
get
even
this
initiations.
we get this idea of saviors, and it's you know, and we see this in many different cultures, and there's even an understanding that this is what Medea is doing. Okay,
Hmm.
in some of the versions of the myth, she doesn't ascend to the stars. Instead, she returns to the cave with a promise to constantly reincarnate, to save everyone. This is the bodhisattva vow that we see in Buddhism, right? And
Hmm.
so I fundamentally believe that what it is some people wake up to the reality of life, that this is a refining machine that turns us into adults, into beautiful people that exist outside of time.
Hmm.
But it is such a painful, intense experience. Many of us can't break out. We have to go through cycle after cycle after cycle. And so there are those special souls, the bodhisattvas, the Medeas, the ones who sacrifice their own limitlessness in order to ensure that we all become saved, right?
Hmm.
This is what Jesus is claiming to, but is failing to be. That's what
Yeah.
Medea is. That's what the spirit of Artemis is,
Hmm.
right? They're constantly saving. They're calling us into that, you know, that reality. And this is the
Hmm.
thing. It's like these figures will exist and will continue to reincarnate until everyone has come out of it.
Hmm.
And so they will never come out of it, you know,
For sure.
right?
Just
It's an absurd, right?
yeah.
Because both are always
Just
true. Timelessness and time are perpetual.
mhm. Yeah. Well, I guess I have a bit of a fixation with that now. Like, where were they going? You know, like, so at the same time, I have this idea that, well, it's just an idea. I mean, it's not, it's an idea. Like, probably if you do this kind of stuff and you create a way of actually open a door for a person and using some drugs, some protocols or whatever, to go and experience by himself something beyond the normal everyday life, that it will give new meaning to existence. Um, if you wanted to control people, you will take that out of it and you will give them that answer,
You know,
and you will
exactly.
tell them this is what it is. You don't need to go over there.
The
Just
big
stay
difference,
here and
okay?
I will tell you what it is.
The Saturnian mind wants to become king of the earth, right? Whereas
Okay.
the Ionic mind wants to play in the fractals of time. They want to explore the infinite dimensions of reality and all of its infinite possibility. When you
Mhm.
wake up to timelessness, you wake up to this possibility of infinite reality, and you can go do anything. And the sad part is like many of these Saturnian magicians, they tap into this shit and then they try to create a reality. They try to
Mhm.
stop time. They try to manifest their, you know, and they destroy themselves.
Or
But this is
create
the
a
thing.
word, or create a concept like faith.
Exactly. Create a concept like faith, create a perfected, unchanging absolute. But that is anathema to nature. The real
Mhm.
magic is embracing the change and recognizing that
Exactly.
you can
Adaptability.
fly and go anywhere.
Let's go with it. Flow. Just go with the flow,
Exactly.
bro.
You know, when you come into that Helios magic, it's like you know, you haven't transcended life, you've transcended you know, the bonds. You get to play and do whatever you want. You get to experience the fullness of all realities. You
Mhm.
know, you get to manifest different things, you
Mhm.
know, and go about it and have all of that fun. That's the whole point of life. The one becomes many to know itself, so why would it ever stop? knowing itself. When you
Exactly, bro.
achieve timelessness, it's not like you stop knowing yourself. You are now just in the play, right? You've woken up to the game. You're in a different way. You're not bound like the rest. You're
Mhm.
no longer caught up in the greed, you know?
Mhm. Well, Snappy, bro, what an amazing presentation you just gave us. I
Thank
mean,
you. I'm glad you appreciate
well,
it.
like,
I know it was
I'm
long.
just seeing like here, like live is like 3 hours and 20 minutes, and it was like this for me. Like, what
Beautiful.
an amazing, like, thank you very much. I mean, I was thinking that just streaming and do this idea of streaming, but after your presentation, for sure I will make some subtitles for it, accurate ones, because we don't have much this in with subtitles in Spanish, you know. There's a lot of people over here that are very
People don't
interested.
talk about this
Not
stuff, right?
everybody speaks English anymore, you know. Before
That's
everybody
also true.
had to, but now
No,
here
we, you know,
people
we,
don't
we
give
got
a shit.
that, you know, translating it into multiple languages is so important because it's about expanding your perspective. You know, that's one of the things that Ammon is teaching people is by learning the Greek, you shift your perspective and you change your reality. You know, English is a capitalistic colonial language designed by empire, right? And
Mm.
it's intimately connected to this to the Israeli project.
Yeah.
You can see
Well,
this within the
probably
magic of
probably
John Dee.
Spanish also,
You
bro.
know?
Probably
Yeah,
Spanish is not a
no,
friendly one.
but by
But
expanding, you know, your
I
perspective,
know
you
what
get
you
to
mean. Yeah.
see things clearer.
Yeah.
And this and why Greek is important though, because Greek is something earlier. It doesn't
Mhm.
have that Christian ugliness. It has its own ugliness, like everything. It's still
Yeah.
of the universe, you know. But the point is to expand your perspective and to give you the keys to see reality through a new light, you know? Languages do that. All right.
It's amazing, brother.
All
Well,
right.
Snappy, man, it has been like a ride. I'm not alone here. My team was here looking for everything to work. I'm not a technological person, and everything worked. I guess. I hope this is live, isn't it? It's live. And Snappy, thank you very much, man. I mean, this it has been amazing, and for sure, I will. This will be in our page, but in our YouTube channel. But at the same time, I will go over it again and make sure that I have proper subtitles to it. This is what we are doing. This is what we're doing. And thank you very much to everybody that is connected here. Um, we have we have some people that has been listen to everything we've been talking about. And
Beautiful.
thank you very much, Snappy again. We cannot
Yeah, let's do this
thank you enough,
again, you
brother.
know? I'd love to
Yeah,
have you
but
back on my channel and you know, anytime you want to talk wild stuff, you give me a topic and I'll research the hell out of it and we can go
oh,
philosophical and
I have a
mystical.
list. I have a
All
list.
right.
I have a list. So I will
All
send it
right.
to you and you will choose. I have
Perfect.
a list. I have a special list for you.
I love it. I love it. Look forward to more chats.
Well, Snappy, brother, I hope you have a great what day is it? Today is Tuesday?
No,
Wednesday?
Wednesday.
A good Wednesday night. I'm sorry, man. We have been working like
I know, man.
timelessness. And it's like
I see all
I'm
the
not
work
used
you
to
guys are
being a
doing. It's great.
computer, you know, and I have been in a computer for a lot, like these past days all day. And it's like I don't even know what day it is. But we love it. We love what we do. Thank you very much again, Snappy and brother. We
Yeah,
keep in touch. And this is our first live stream and
beautiful.
probably the best one we'll have. Thank
All
you,
right.
bro.
Much love, my friend. Take care.
Much love. Take care. Good night.
Good night.
Muchas gracias. Buenas noches.